Hello and welcome to the Bond Revisited podcast with me, Tom.
And me, Joe.
The podcast where we rewatch the Bond films one by one, discuss them, and then rank them alongside the other Bond films to build our own definitive list for the Bond franchise. You are listening to episode 13, where we'll be revisiting the film Octopussy. Now, it's a very strange feeling to not have much to say about a film before watching it, and then watching the film and somehow having less to say about it.
That's so true. You've hit the nail on the head there. Yeah.
It's like, I put this very low on my initial ranking in episode 0. It might have been third worst, something like that. And that was all about saying, like, I don't remember this film, but it's probably bad because it's towards the end of Roger Moore's era, which I'm not a big fan of. And now that I've watched it, it's like, I still feel pretty confident in that, I guess. Oh, God.
I feel like it would have been better maybe if I hadn't have watched this and just made it up for this episode.
And then Bond says, "Darling, what's up with that?"
Yeah, I feel like I would have had more to talk about.
I think you're right. Like, if you gave someone like the plot synopsis of like, okay, Bond is going to go to India for this one, and like just go crazy with it, you probably would hit the nail on the head of some of these. Like, there's a tiger.
Yeah. Elephants.
Like, you could just say all the stereotypes and probably be like 80% correct in what you're talking about, despite never seeing the film.
Yeah. But we saw it. It.
I think it is very fair to say, we're quite negative right off the bat, but I think even before we both watched it, this was the first one that we've done of these where neither of us was excited about rewatching this.
No. And I think, especially considering how much I liked For Your Eyes Only last time and how much of a change of pace that was, and knowing that we were going to come back to this one, I think that made it worse for me.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of was expecting this a little bit, but you would think like for someone like yourself where For Your Eyes Only should have set the template for all the John Glenn films. And to be fair, there is stuff that's kind of carried across, and I think you can tell these are the same director, but I don't know, like something went wrong here. Something went very wrong.
I guess we should also mention with this film, because when people do discuss this, they always say about how this came out at the same time as the rival Bond film, because there was the Never Say Never Again film that they got Sean Connery back for, the whole thing with Kevin McClory reared its ugly head. And so I think there's definitely an element of they wanted to make this as Bondy as possible to try and kind of beat the competition, I guess.
Just whatever that means, though. It feels like they accidentally already did that with the last film, and they kind of already used a lot of ammunition for that one. So what are they going to do for this one? You might be thinking to do that, and
just throw everything
whatever
at
they
it.
Felt like. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's just an incoherent mess of a film.
And end podcast. There we go.
Done.
Let's wrap that up. Cue the music and we'll get out of here.
Nice and short this week. Lovely.
Yeah, I like it. I like that. Okay, let's get into it here. Right. So we kick off with the circles and Bond coming across, and we get a very old school version of the Bond theme. I couldn't tell you exactly what film this is from, but it feels like it's either like Dr. No or From Russia with Love or something like that. This is like, I'm pretty sure, and I didn't double check, this is just like the original version of it. No remixes, no updated version. This is just the original Bond theme from the 60s.
Yeah, it did sound old. It didn't have any sort of flourishes to it that some of the previous ones had, so very much back to basics.
Which I liked. I thought that was a nice touch. I mean, you've already kind of mentioned how we're going to see this a lot throughout this film, but the reason why they probably did this version of the Bond theme, the classic original version, is due to the competition with Never Say Never Again. So it's somewhat of a shame that that's the reason, but it was still nice after all these films to hear that original version again.
Yeah, and nothing else had changed there, right? It was still the same walk and dots and all that jazz.
Yeah, so we start on I put military base, but this is very confusing, this setting. So it's a military base because you see a lot of hangars, you see a lot of troops. There might be some tanks there, I can't quite remember, but there's clearly a lot of military presence. But at the same time, you see a load of horses. there's like a horse race going on at this military base, which is just very confusing right off the bat. So don't hold on to that feeling.
Oh, yeah. Just put a pin in that.
Yeah, because this is not as confusing as it gets. But you see someone driving this brown Jeep with a carriage with a horse behind it to joining in the horse racing. And I saw that as Bond straight away and was like, no, that can't be Bond. That would just be silly.
Yeah.
But it's Bond.
That's Bond.
Yeah. And we see that I put Cuban general because it's some sort of general or some sort of high military officer, but he has that very classic Cuban look with like the hat and the green uniform and like the big bushy beard. So I was kind of going on the assumption that this was taking place somewhere in Cuba.
Yeah, after the last film, which featured Margaret Thatcher, I did watch this and think, is that meant to be Fidel Castro? Because it looks a lot like him. But no, I think it's just a general person. Yeah.
Yeah, but I still... We were talking about this before we started, but I don't know where this takes place. And my assumption was that it's Cuba, but it's such a weird location that you just don't really get enough clues to know for sure.
Yeah, I had no clue. This is where we needed some text on the screen, which does come up later in the film, but here, no, none.
No. So Bond parks up with his horse, or parks his Jeep up with his horse that is carried there, and he takes off. So he's in very much like, I don't know, horse carer gear, like posh git sort of gear with this cap and
Cravat.
very much like a very horse guy. So he takes off this yellow shirt that he had and he reverses his jacket, reverses his hat, reverses everything to turn into an officer. So he's dressing himself up as one of these officers at the base. And a woman shows up and that's Bond's contact who is helping him out. They talk a little bit about what's going on. And the woman gives Bond an ID, which has him as a Toro, I think is the guy's name. So he's dressing up as is it a lieutenant?
Something like that, yeah. Some high up rank.
Yeah, a high up officer. So Bond is now flipped all his clothes, dressed up, and the woman gives him the ID, which says Toro, and there's a little mustache on there. Like it's, this did make me laugh actually. There's like we get a zoom in on the ID, and there's a picture of Roger Moore, but it's like got a little mustache on there. So Bond takes the ID and is about to leave, and she's like, "No, you gotta put on the mustache."
Which she doesn't do very carefully. I swear it was wonky.
It looked a bit off. She did just slap it on.
Yeah, no care. Yeah.
So Bond is now in this disguise. So he goes from one disguise to another disguise. He starts walking through the military base. He gets to an army checkpoint. He acts like an officer. I think he corrects someone on something. It's like, oh, Robert, like not really saying anything because he'll give it away. But he walks through, and we also see these SAM missiles, surface-to-air missiles, around as well. So I guess take note of that. And he enters this hangar with these military planes inside, and lots of soldiers everywhere, lots of kind of stuff going on. And Bond goes through the base. He goes behind these like small walls and finds a man with this like mini little radar dish that's making some bleeping sounds. Apologies if I'm being vague, but just so you know, this has nothing to do with the rest of the film. So if I skip any details, you're literally missing nothing because it never comes up again.
Yeah.
So Bond judo chops the man, starts putting explosives on this radar, this mini little radar dish, and as he's doing that, these kind of walls that are around him drop, and he's completely surrounded. And the real Toro shows up, and you see them standing side by side because he's got the little mustache and everything, and he's like, take him away. And Bond says, you're a Toro too, which, okay. Okay.
A little bit too late now, Bond. Yeah, just...
Yeah, still very casual, cocky Roger Moore Bond here.
Yeah.
And Bond is captured, and Bond is put onto a Jeep to be taken away, and the woman that he was there with, did you catch her name by any chance?
No. Did she have a name? I have no clue.
I would assume so, but again, she never comes up again. So I just put woman.
Yeah, woman.
So Bond's been captured. She sees this and she gets in her car and drives up to the car. So the Jeep with the soldiers in with Bond is driving. She drives up alongside and starts doing some, I put kissy faces She's trying to distract the guards to help Bond escape, and she's all like showing some leg and trying to be all sexy and all like, hi boys. And the soldiers initially aren't having it, but then we get some quite good facial expressions from Roger here, where he's trying to like egg them on to go check it out, be like, hey man, like, it's a lovely lady right there. Come on, what are you doing? But because they don't speak the language, Roger Moore's just like going crazy with his eyebrows and eyes to like, hey, look over there, man. It's good stuff.
It's eyebrow overload from Sir Rog there. He was in his element.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't need a stuntman for that.
Oh, no.
Those muscles are working just fine. So eventually the guards do look over and Bond pulls the 2 parachutes, like these 2 soldiers, I guess because it's some sort of air base. He pulls the 2 parachutes and they get taken away by their parachutes. And the woman starts doing the same to the driver and a general or an officer at the front. The officer smiles, and I think Bond shoots the driver, shoots someone.
Yeah, I think he shoots the tyres to sort of get it out of control. Yeah.
Yeah, so he shoots the tyre, and I want to say jump off. I can't quite. I think jumps onto the car that the woman is driving. So as the woman is being all like flirty and stuff, and the general kind of is smiling, but then stops smiling because sees Bond. Bond shoots the tyres. And they crash into a chicken coop, which I don't know if we need some sort of chicken counter for this franchise, but I did not realize how many times they just have someone crash into a chicken coop and all the chickens are there.
I think it's got something to do with John Glenn. I think he has a thing for birds.
That's very true. But I think this has happened before the John Glenn films as well.
Okay.
But you're right, because For Your Eyes only had this, where the German guy crashed into a chicken coop as well.
He loves his chickens and his pigeons and his doves and all sorts of birds. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. But so Bond says thank you to the woman and something about seeing her in Miami. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So all the sirens are going off. So they now know Bond has escaped, or they're coming after Bond. So the woman was actually bringing the horse carriage, whatever you call it, the thing that Bond was driving, like that's there. So Bond gets into it, climbs back, gets into it, unhooks it, gets in, and we see the back of it open, and that the horse was actually a fake horse.
What?
I was fooled.
Wow.
I was like, that was a horse, but it isn't though.
That's crazy.
So the back of this horse, because it is just the back, like goes upwards. And Bond then drives out of the carriage in this small little plane. And a load of cars and bikes are charging him. He's charging them. He just flies over at the last second and starts flying around the base to escape. All the while, the SAM missiles that we saw before start firing missiles at Bond. So Bond is just tries to outmaneuver them, really. No fancy gadgets, which I thought was quite a nice touch, actually. He drives quite fast all the way around. He avoids at the last second. It comes back. So he goes into the hangar that he was before where Toro is. They try to close the door. Of course, Bond just makes it. The missile follows him. So the doors are now closed. So the missile blows up the hangar. We get a giant explosion. For some reason, we have a load of rich folk nearby being like, oh, goodness. Bond is running out of fuel because he's now gotten away. He stops at a gas station. Like a really small rural gas station, parks up next to where the gas is, and then asks the man to fill her up, and that's your opening sequence.
Yeah, nice big smile at the end there, and then that's it.
So normally I would have stopped a little bit more to talk about this, but this whole sequence is just so whatever, like not really bad, and I think some of the plane stuff is quite cool. I did quite enjoy that, especially just because of how quick it is, and I think the design of Bond's small plane is... It's pretty solid. I do quite like it, but everything else was just like so generic. I don't think much of this scene at all.
I think you're right in saying it's just okay. It's not bad. It's not great. I like Bond in disguise, and I like the little inside out general disguise that he's got going on there, and I like how he deals with. Because when he goes to plant the bomb on the radar dish and then they find it and take it off, And I was there thinking, well, then how does he blow it up, or does he just leave it? But then, oh, okay, he uses a missile. So I like that he uses a missile to finish the job. But yeah, it is just very much a okay. Right, let's move on. There was nothing really stand out from it.
No. And they've gone back to something that I don't really like. They did this with the last film, technically, which we criticized that sequence quite a bit, but they're now doing it again where John Glenn, I guess, doesn't like, or I guess his style is not to have the story or the plot matter in the opening sequence, which is such a huge shame because it's something that you saw in all the Lewis Gilbert films with You Only Live Twice, and then when he came back for Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker, that he found a really great way of incorporating it in. Not so much Moonraker, I guess, but you got to see Jaws in Moonraker at least, right? So that was setting up Jaws was back at the very least. But The Spy Who Loved Me is one of the best ones because it combines the plot of the main film and kicks it off to help the film be a bit shorter, which this film could have done with, as well as a standalone great stunt. And for me, those are the two big things I want to see with this, with these Bond sequences. And Octopussy just completely, it's just none of this matters. Like, you could have just completely skipped it. You wouldn't have missed much. Some of the elements are all right. It's just so, like, unneeded. And I don't think this is probably going to get fixed anytime soon. But I personally much prefer it where you at least get some story stuff happening in this opening sequence, even if it's just like, oh, Bond is off elsewhere while this other stuff is happening. Like, that's, for me, is what I want the template to be.
Yeah, I would have liked it if it had a bit of a link. I think if it doesn't have a link, that's fine. But then it really has to be like, to me, it has to kind of stand out on its own. It needs to have something that really sets it apart, and this just didn't. So, yeah, kind of just the worst of both.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame. I don't know if we're going to move back to those type of sequence, but you're right. It doesn't technically have to. But I think with this one, and I think it's a trend of the John Glenn era where the films are starting to become longer, and this film is pretty long, and they really would have helped themselves. Yeah, they really would have helped themselves by cutting out 5 minutes, by having some of that story be in this opening sequence. Like, that would have been a massive boost to the film.
We're only just getting started, folks, but the story of this film is just, yeah, it's a long film, and it's going to be interesting trying to explain some of this stuff.
Well, let's start with the easy stuff then, Joe. Let's start with the opening sequence.
Okay.
Or the credits.
Yeah, the title sequence. I'll start with the song. I think I usually start with the song now, but the song it's not anything to do with the film title, which is a rare occurrence for the Bond films, but there we are. And it's All Time High by Rita Coolidge. I think John Barry was back for this one, but this song is just so bad. I really don't like this song. We've had so many of these types of songs now. They're kind of, gentler, softer, ballady. I've said it so many times in these episodes, and I'm just so tired of it now. And this one in particular, I think, just sounds really kind of schmaltzy and it just doesn't sound like a Bond theme to me. Really?
I would agree with that. This is actually the first time in my notes where during the credit sequence I didn't write a single thing about the theme.
Yeah.
I just felt so like I was more interested in the visuals to the point where it just ended. I was like, "Oh right, the song. What was that about then?" Like it's so nothingly. I don't really hate it, but I do kind of agree. It's not really a Bond theme, and it is brutal how many films in a row we've had these romantic ballads, and this is like the worst one. But it almost feels like they had to hit like this rock bottom just so they can mix it up for the next film. Because obviously we both know what's coming, but this feels like they had to go all the way down. I'm trying not to say all time low. They had to really sink to the bottom and really like be like, guys, what are we doing? Like sit down in a room and have an honest conversation with themselves so we could get something different. Because I can't believe how many of these type of songs they did in a row and how inconsistent they have been.
I do wonder, when a Bond film comes out now, it's usually quite a big deal with the song and where it is in the charts because they have Adele and Billie Eilish and all that sort of stuff. Was it the same back then where there would be an element of this needs to be a good song that does well in the charts? I
think it must have been, right? Like with Live and Let Die, I think that's when it probably would have started.
Yeah, and maybe this song just didn't have a very good reception. I mean, audience-wise for the film, but also just like listening to music, and yeah, that's maybe what made them realize let's maybe change tune with this. But it's just as a tune, it just doesn't really go anywhere. It's so monotonous. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, there's just nothing. Like, I criticize Moonraker for not really having a hook, but at least that was, looking back, I feel a bit mean towards that theme. And maybe it's just this theme being a lot worse that's making me feel better towards it. But I would listen to Moonraker, which at the time I was a bit like, this is very forgettable, whatever. But I would listen to that over this any day of the week. Any day.
Yeah, for sure. Visually, I put down that it was more interesting visually, but then the bar is quite low for that. We have talked about how they just are not really getting these title sequences very, very right. And just leaving it as these very plain silhouetted dancing women and not much else. Of course, that's in here as well. But there's a few extra things. There's like they play around with some lasers and have like the outline of Bond and an outline of an octopus and 007 and like projecting out onto women's bodies. And there's a few different things with like light rays coming out of guns. And it's still not amazing to me when I was watching it. I think maybe the song as well was just sort of just want to get through it, but it was definitely a step closer to having more interesting visuals. It was just very, I don't know if this is a fair kind of criticism to make, but I put down that it was very mishmashy, but I think they kind of always are, and even ones that I'm going to say that I like are also probably going to be quite mishmashy and not very cohesive. But this one was just like, oh, let's just use a laser. Oh, let's just use this. But I'll take that compared to what we've had before.
Yeah, it held my attention better than other ones. Like, at least with some of these other recent ones, after the first, 20 seconds, you've kind of seen it all. And I feel like this one isn't quite like that. It's at least going to throw some other stuff at you.
Yeah.
Not all of it works. I wasn't super into the laser coming out. And we have some kind of quite awkward shots, I would say. There's like an awkward freeze frame at some times, and we have it where there's a gun and it's supposed to be that these red laser outlines of Bond or 007 are shooting out of the gun, and the women are reacting to that, which doesn't really work too well. But also I should say it's really shocking just how many times they just have naked women in this, and also the other ones, and just don't hide it at all.
No. Not at all.
I just didn't really think it went this far. Surely this is a PG or something, right? But yeah, it's just just a naked woman, barely any lights to cover anything. And it's, I mean, I guess it is what it is. I just didn't think that's how these ones went.
I thought it was a bit more, I don't want to say tasteful, but I think I would have, before watching some of these, I would have thought they towed the line a bit more in terms of what they showed. Maybe a silhouette would be fine. But yeah, there's so many times where it's just, the lighting just changes and you can just see it, everything.
Yeah, it's very
I sound like Patrick Stewart in Extras.
Oh, I saw it.
Yeah. I've seen it all.
Yeah.
So it was okay. It was fine. I did have something else to say then, but I've completely forgot. Oh yeah, no, it was the freeze frame stuff. You're right. So they're really amateur when they just have it just freeze frames, because clearly maybe they just, unless it was done on purpose, but it screams that they just didn't have the right amount of footage to use. So it's freeze frame, okay, play it from now when we've got that bit come in. It looks really bad.
Oh yeah, for sure. And there was also, speaking of looking bad, there was also a bit where almost like a cutout of Roger Moore or James Bond comes up to then be surrounded by octopus tentacles, which just looked bad. It made me think of Monty Python, honestly, because it would just look so amateur, because it wasn't just animated properly. It was just slowly go up and then just these tentacles just appear on him, and it looked very amateur.
I like the idea of it, but bad implementation. Yeah,
maybe just not the budget being there, but yeah, they're trying to get a little bit more ambitious with these, but they still haven't broken away from that template. We get more women bouncing on trampolines again, spinning in the air.
So many.
For the 10th time.
I would have. That's a good point about that tentacle bit. Is I was expecting there to be 8 arms. and there are only 5.
Yeah.
I do, because I counted. I was like, oh, this is okay. Yeah, Octopussy, tentacles. No, it's 5. What's the deal? Come on, can they not? Have they seen an octopus?
Maybe not. I wouldn't be
Maybe not.
surprised.
Anyway, let's move on. So after the title sequence, we see a circus, and I think it does actually say East Berlin on screen as well now. So we know where we are. We're in East Berlin. There's a circus. You hear all the circus noises, and you see a clown fleeing, running away from something, looking very scared. And he's in like this big, like it's a good clown costume. I'll say that. He's in the full gear. He's got some balloons attached to him as well, and got his hat and his big yellow trousers and everything. And yeah, he's running away from something and ends up having to go through a forest and some trees and shrubbery and everything. And you eventually see that he's being chased by this other circus worker because he's kind of got like a little red shirt and waistcoat on, and he's got knives to use as well as like throwing knives. And you do get a little bit of this clown going through, and every now and then his hat might fall off or a balloon would burst, and just giving the chaser more of an idea of where he is. And you think that he's gotten quite far away from him, the clown, until very suddenly there's another one right up close to him. You wonder, how did that happen? And then you realise that they're twins. There's 2 of them actually chasing this clown. Identical twins, obviously from the circus. So, yeah, the clown keeps going and gets to sort of like a bridge area near a river, and is just about to climb up when the twins, or one of them, throws a knife and misses, and another one throws and gets the clown in the back, which causes him to drop down into the river below and get washed away. So after that, you get a shot of this fancy-looking building as a sign saying it's the British ambassador's residence, where they're clearly having or about to have some ball or some party, because there's a man and a woman, kind of very posh-looking older man and a woman, getting ready in their very fancy room. And the woman's doing her makeup or something in the mirror, and in the mirror she sees the clown, who I guess wasn't quite killed, just injured, coming out of the river, and smashes through the glass window or the glass door, and kind of just with his last breath falls and lets go of an egg, a very fancy looking Fabergé egg, and it rolls out of his hand, and this old man comes and picks it up and has a look, and looks very confused and worried.
It is a confusing and worrying matter, isn't it, when a clown breaks through your windows and gives you a Fabergé egg? I would be confused and worried. I think it's a fair enough emotion.
Yeah, that's a fair enough feeling. I mean, this whole scene is quite like, it does definitely throw you in. You're getting right in the middle of this chase, and I do like a lot of this because it is done very visually. There is no dialogue in this scene. It is just a clown being chased, and the idea of this person in such a comic outfit is being chased in this really kind of deadly situation. I like where this film starts, and I like that smashing through and rolling. It's very dramatic, So yeah, I didn't mind how this film started.
The problem is, for me, is that I think you're right. The actual kind of scene and how it's put together is pretty good in terms of that chase and the panic there and the reveal of the twin and these guys throwing knives. It's all very nice, but it's the fact that it's bloody a clown and that it's all circus based. Because if you took that element out of it, this would be a really intense, intriguing scene. But I'm not that intrigued about a clown giving someone an egg. And I can't get behind a clown being chased. It's just like, it just takes me out of it so much that I just didn't really feel anything about this opening scene. Like, it didn't make me intrigued or anything. But I think the idea of someone in East Berlin having this Fabergé egg and having to get it to the British ambassador, that's intriguing. But when you put a load of clown stuff and these knife throwers from a circus, it's just like, oh. I mean, this is a common thing throughout this film, because guess what? This is not the first time we're going to the circus.
Oh, no.
We're going to be going back here again, but making it a circus in a Bond film, I think, was just a silly move. It doesn't really annoy me, but it definitely just takes me out of so much of this film because it's like I don't care about a load of circus people. Like, it just ruins it a bit. This spy thriller you're trying to make.
So would you have rather it was just a wait, who the character actually is? Would you rather it would just be them, just in a covert disguise or something?
Yeah, something like that. Something that kind of makes a bit more sense. Or if he was a soldier or something, but like, I don't know what they were thinking with this circus stuff. Like, it becomes a heavy part of a lot of this film. And for me, it's kind of like, well, I guess it makes it a little bit memorable because you're like, oh yeah, the one with the circus stuff. But it just really removes me out of this. I can't take this seriously when there's a clown running through a forest. Especially because, as you say, it's a very good clown costume.
It is, yeah.
They went all in, but I'm just not interested in a clown. And I think it's probably the reason why this wasn't the opening sequence. I mean, the first one is probably because there's no James Bond in here. But I think the second one is that if you started on this, if you sat down in the cinema and this was the first thing you see, I don't know, maybe that'd be quite cool actually. But, but yeah, I think they probably wrote themselves into a corner where they couldn't have a circus brouhaha be the opening of the film, so they had to add in another like Bond sequence just so with people, it's a Bond film, I get it, I know this.
You saying that you're not a big fan of the clown stuff and the circus stuff, I do wonder what your thoughts are going to be come the end. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah,
because it comes back with a vengeance, the circus, don't you worry about that.
This is yeah, the themes of vengeance from the last film are back.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about, taking vengeance. But yeah, so the clown dies and gives the egg to the British ambassador, and we cut to London, and we see a first-person view of Bond holding his hat, and he's about to toss the hat onto the rack, where he stops because he sees a young woman. So this is in Moneypenny's office, and sees the young woman. He compliments her because of course he does, and he then spots that Moneypenny is in the corner, and Bond is like, and she's, I didn't write too much of this dialogue down. It's the whole bit is that Moneypenny has hired a new assistant to help her out who's a lot younger than her, and they kind of make some jabs at Moneypenny being a bit older, like she's implying like, oh, you're only talking to her because she's as attractive, as charming as I used to be. And Bond says, no, of course not, you're still lovely. And he has a big thing of roses, and he gives one to Moneypenny and then gives the rest to the assistant.
I gotta say,
yeah,
this scene might have one of my favourite lines of the whole film, though. It's such a nothing scene, as you're right. It's just a bit of a gag about how Moneypenny's getting older and now there's a younger one to take her place. But it's just when Bond spots the Penelope Smallbone, her name is, when he spots her.
One more time. What?
Penelope Smallbone, I think, is her name.
Okay, all right.
Unless I just misheard that. But it's when he spots her, and then Moneypenny says, "Oh, I'm over here, James." And it's just, I don't know what it is about the way Roger Moore said this line, but when he goes, "Oh, but of course you are," it's just that he really, he's like, it's such a, he just goes all in for that. It's proper hammy.
Yeah, I like this one. It's very brief, but I like that they're kind of playing off this angle. It's something a bit different, and I think actually they play off each other quite well. Bond and Moneypenny.
Yeah, I mean, and you have mentioned in previous ones how the actress playing Moneypenny is getting a bit older, just like Roger Moore is. But yeah, it's like, well, I think they clearly noticed this as well now, so maybe sort of paving the way for a new actress to play Moneypenny there.
Well, we're about 20 years since the first film, so
yeah,
it makes sense.
Yeah,
but I do generally like this idea of this acknowledgement of characters getting older. I think that's kind of, I liked it in the last film. There's not so much of it in this one. And it's quite interesting, actually, just to go off on a bit of a tangent, but I was surprised at how not bad Roger Moore looked in this film.
Oh,
I was
really
expecting him to just look awful, but I actually think he looks pretty good.
Oh, I think he looks pretty bad.
Oh, do you? Oh, no.
And I think part of that is because, as you say, they didn't really have that element of aging apart from Moneypenny in this bit. Whereas they kind of, I felt like they did in For Your Eyes Only, to an extent, when they had BB and stuff, and they were kind of pointing out the age difference there. And it just seems like they've gone backwards now, and Bond is just, he can get anyone, and there's nothing there in terms of age. He's just the same as he's ever been.
Maybe, yeah, there is one specific character where that definitely seems to be the case, but yeah, I think you're right. But I was expecting to notice it a little bit more because Moonraker, I was like, oh, he's looking a bit old, and 4 Hours Only, obviously, is a little bit older still, but there was more acknowledgement, and it felt like a natural progression from Your Eyes Only. But you are right; they don't really acknowledge it, and they don't kind of continue on that route too much. But I thought he looked. I'm going to give him some credit. I think he looks all right.
I mean, he gets some plastic surgery for the next film, so yeah, he definitely looks different in the next one.
That's what I was thinking. I think the fact that he just hasn't got plastic surgery yet does wonders.
Yeah, I think he gets rid of his mole, which is a bit sad. Anyway,
so yes, so R.I.P. to the mole. But so Bond then leaves, goes through the doors goes into M's office, and we see the minister is there, Frederick Gray. We see a man called, I put Jim Fanny, but is that his last name?
I think it's Fanning, but let's call him Jim Fanny. Why not?
Yeah. It's called Octopussy. Anything's possible.
Exactly.
And also we see someone behind the desk who is, I believe, meant to be M. They don't really address it, but they've recast M, and now this is just somebody else playing M, who I believe appeared in a previous film, just to make things even more confusing for everyone for some reason.
He was in Spy Who Loved Me, wasn't he? Was it Spy Who Loved Me?
Yeah, I think so. It was something during the Roger Moore era.
Yeah.
And I don't think he necessarily does a bad job, but I don't like that they don't address it at all. Like, there's no acknowledgement that this is someone different. There's nothing like that. Like, how at the moment they're kind of building up how Moneypenny is getting a bit older and they have somebody else new and things like that. Like, there's kind of almost like this progression. So when she does get recast or that changes out, there's some sort of acknowledgement there. This one is just like, yeah, that's M, and you're meant to just believe it's M, and there's just nothing that happens to make you... Like, I was confused if it was M or not, to be honest, initially. But I was like, well, he's in the chair, but Bill Tanner was also in the chair in the last film. So I found it a bit confusing. I would have liked something to kind of be a little bit even if it breaks the fourth wall a little. Maybe if M looked at the camera and says, this never would have happened to the other fella, that would have cleared things right up for me.
It would have been nice to have something like that. And they don't shy away from fourth wall stuff in this film. So, what you asked for is not that far-fetched.
No, not in this film.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think he's bad, but I just don't... He's no Bernard Lee, and I think they could have been a bit smarter with this, rather than just being like, no, that's M. What are you talking about? Yeah, of course it's M.
Yeah, especially because in the last one, they said that he was on leave as a bit of an explanation. So it would have been, I don't know, they could have had maybe he was redecorating the office as Bond walks in and he's like, oh, change these curtains. There you go. That's new M now.
Yeah. I mean, they probably didn't want to kind of go into this idea of like recasting people means it's a different character because they've made things so confusing. But it would have made more sense to me because I think they did this with Judi Dench, that it's like M is just a job and somebody else is now doing that job. I would have liked that. But they don't treat it like that at all.
Yeah.
So M in quotation marks, Frederick Gray and Jim Fanning is there, and M shows Bond the Fabergé egg, the one that the clown had before. Bond gives a little bit of an explanation of what it is, his usual stick. We're saying it's priceless, it was owned by the royal family of Russia or something, and he then opens it up and there's a little model inside of, I think, a carriage or something.
Yeah.
And M tells him, oh, it's a fake. But we found out that the real thing is being ordered very soon. So Jim's there because he's an expert in antiques. So he is saying that we're seeing quite a lot of these eggs coming from different sources. Like, I think he says there's like 4 different eggs have been sold this year, which is a lot higher than they normally do. So something is up with that. Like, something's not quite right here. So M says to Bond to go to this auction where they're auctioning a real version of the egg. And Jim is going to be there so they can basically try and find out who's selling this thing, see if everything is actually legit. And then we get some more kind of confusing stuff here. So Jim leaves. Goodbye, Jim. And the ministry is trying to figure out what could be going on. I think he throws out saying, like, maybe the Russians are trying to raise our currency because these eggs go for just a ridiculous amount of money. They're extremely expensive. So maybe they're trying to mess with the currency. And M has this file for this whole operation, which was Operation Trove. And we find out that the clown from before is 009. So 009 was investigating this, got the egg, but he was killed. So Bond is replacing 009 for this mission to investigate this, joining Jim at this auction. And they're like, we don't really have many leads, of which Bond says, we do have a lead, the property of a lady, which is written down in the Operation Trove mission file. And this is not as confusing as the film gets, but it definitely establishes the theme of this film, which is we don't care if you get this. We are just going to say a lot of things, and you're just going to have to go with it. And I definitely felt that with this theme. It's it's good filmmaking because they're setting up that they don't care about the person watching, and they're just going to throw a load of stuff at you and just hope you carry on. And if you don't, that's fine. We're going to keep going anyway.
Yeah. This film's thing is decoys and fakes and duplicates. There's definitely a running theme of me trying to, as I was watching this, trying to work out, okay, so that's the real and that's a fake, and then okay, they've switched that there and that's now in that one. And yeah, it's as you say, I'm sure they didn't really expect the audience to follow along too closely. You just go there and watch all the stunts and everything, but they really don't make it easy for themselves when they're trying to explain the plot for this film. My God. One thing I did note in this little end briefing scene though is as he gives Bond the file when he says, this is Operation Trove, was this a little thing they were doing where every film had a different operation name? Because last one it was Undertow. And it seems like they're now making a conscious effort to give everyone, this is Operation X, Y, or Z. I don't know why or when they stopped doing that.
I can't remember because the Man with the Golden Gun didn't have, or maybe it did actually because of the energy crisis.
Yeah, possibly.
I want to say Live and Let Die didn't.
I just think it's kind of cool, actually.
I think did.
Yeah, and obviously, Property of a Lady is a little reference to one of the short stories, I think, of Ian Fleming's.
But, I think I was reading that. It's very direct because at this point in the franchise, it's not something we're talking about too much because it's not, we're just taking these films for what they are. But at this point, elements of the books are coming in, but it's like it doesn't matter. And I think it's been like that for about 5 films. So a lot of these films are now just kind of references to the book, and they just take one of the names and just slap it on the film. But they have not followed the books in a very long time. Maybe Live and Let Die or The Man with the Golden Gun. I think those two might have been the last ones. But since like The Spy Who Loved Me, these have just been like completely their own thing with very specific elements taken from the books and names taken from the books, but everything else just completely original and different.
One way to notice that, because I read this and I thought, that's quite interesting, is if the film, in the credits, if the film is Ian Fleming's The Spy Who Loved Me, that means they're taking more from the actual book. If it says Ian Fleming's James Bond in Octopussy, that means they're just using the character and they've basically rewritten the story for the film.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's where they put Ian Fleming in that, whether they put it on Bond or whether they put it on the title, is how you can tell.
Because he had died at this point, hadn't he? Like for quite a while, I want to say.
Yeah. After the end briefing scene, we move over to Moscow, I would assume, as we are in this very big Russian-looking USSR kind of situation room. There's this big table of generals and very high-ranking people. I think one of them is meant to be the president. I don't know who it would have been at that time in Russia, but I'm pretty sure it looks like him. And they're all there discussing some plans. Gogol's there. Good old Gogol's back.
Of course.
Huh? Of course. Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. He's a fan favourite. Anyway, the is it president? Is that what they were called?
I can't imagine it was.
Premier.
Not like premier. Yeah, it would be something like that. Maybe it's just comrade. I don't know. But I can't imagine he's president.
Mr. President. No, Premier, whoever the head guy is, was saying about Gogol's just had a report and very detailed report, basically outlining that the USSR wants to follow the NATO disarmament plans, basically, that they're gonna agree to them. And yeah, that was Gogol's opinion of what to do. Because all of their weapons they want as a defensive mechanism, not as an offensive one. Except there is one other guy on this very big table who does not agree with this, and it's General Orlov, who kind of interrupts and gives his opinion of the situation, stands up and rotates this whole table around to reveal this massive screen on the wall. There's like Lenin on the other side, like a big picture of Lenin on the wall on the other side. And he's got a map up of Europe, and he's basically explaining how Russian power in terms of arms is they have the potential to invade. They have tanks all aligned up against East Germany, and they have Czechoslovakia, and they've got more tanks in Russia, and they could, if they wanted to, advance the Iron Curtain, I suppose. And this General Orlov guy, he's pretty crazy. I mean, from the get-go, this actor...
No.
From the get-go, this actor, clearly his notes were just, really, really amp this up. You are some maniacal, crazy Russian who wants to take over the world sort of deal. So, yeah, don't worry about being a bit too much on the screen, because just everything, the way he acts, his eyes bulging, his veins on his forehead, his accent and his voice, it's just so kind of cartoonish as he's outlining his plan and how, he thinks Russia should carry on expanding. And he's basically told to sit down and shut up. They don't agree with that plan. So he goes to sit back down. I think a lady comes over, some lady that was a kind of receptionist or secretary who had a phone call, and comes up to Orlov and tells him that someone's waiting for him. And so Orlov says he'll go and speak to him in a moment. But yeah, this is kind of the introduction to one of the villains of this film, and he definitely is a memorable one. Maybe not for the right reasons, though. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I guess he is memorable, but he's just barely in this film. Like, this is one of like a few like, he does a lot of stuff in the background, I guess, but it's just such a small part. But I really like this idea, though. I think this is a really solid idea for a Bond film, and the idea of Russia is trying to get peace, but there's still a general within their ranks who is going to go against that, to instigate war and build things up as a extension of like these Cold War storylines we've seen before and what we had for Your Eyes Only. I really like the idea. It just gets completely diluted and with the rest of the film and all the other plots and all the other villains. Like, it's way too complicated. But I think this on itself, solid idea. It's just, guess what? In a few scenes' time, Bond is going to go to India. Like, okay. And then you spend a lot of time in India. So it's like, this stuff just gets so lost. And even the next scene that I guess I'll explain a little bit is him just looking at like jewellery or something. It's like, it's too messy. But I think this idea is a good one, and is probably why they redid it for GoldenEye about 10 years later. Yeah.
Well, I suppose they are running out of time. I mean, I suppose it was only 1983. There was still a decade to go, but yeah, they've got to use up all the Russian storylines whilst it's still there. You're right, though. Most of the scenes he's in it's very plot focused in terms of just the details. He doesn't really do much going forward, which is I don't know. Maybe to some people it's a shame. I don't really like this character, and I don't really like how cartoonish this guy is. But then, yeah, that other people might.
Well, I think he gets away with it in this film, and it's kind of a catch-22 of awfulness, unfortunately, where he is allowed to be so cartoony because he's just not the main villain. Like, if this was your main guy, then I probably would be saying he needs to tone it down a bit. But because there's like 3 different people and he's one of them, like, I quite like the different energy that he brings. But yeah, if he was the main person, I would probably be like, okay, they needed to find a better balance here. But as like the third person in a very messy plot with other villains, I think it works. But it works for the wrong reasons, because they shouldn't have so many villains and stuff going on anyway. Like, they should have probably just said he's the main guy and just tone him down a bit and have it be that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, this is jumping way later in the film, but the way that this character ends, I thought was quite I don't know. I was expecting it to be a bit more in keeping with the craziness of this character. So, and I think that is a problem with, as you say, they just have too many things to tie up. So
yeah, like to give him the ending of the way this character acts is, I think, the film Doctor Strangelove when the guy's riding the bomb with the hat. Like this guy could have pulled that off.
he really could. Yeah,
That's his dream. He dreams that scene. So after Orlov is given a message by the woman in the meeting, we cut to the Kremlin Art Laboratory. Probably saying that wrong because I probably spelt it wrong. We get some more text on screen explaining where it is. So one thing you can say about this film is that at least they mostly put text on screen for some of the locations they go to. So
yes,
thanks, guys.
Much appreciated.
And General Orlov enters inside. It's this kind of like a cellar almost. I don't think it's actually a cellar, but it looks very underground. And we see a large amount of jewelry and art and pieces everywhere. And hold on. Did I meant to type twins? Are the twins in this scene?
I think one of them is.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing because the twins is what they've called them. Apparently, I don't think they actually do have names. Like in the credits, they call Twin 1 and Twin 2. So they did. I think they have names, but in the credits they don't. So one of the twins is in there, and there's a man who's the Russian expert of jewelry, basically. And they explain how one of the pieces is missing, and it's the egg from before. So that guy is there, the twin is there, I think, to connect you back to the initial scene where the twin tries to kill 009, but 009 actually does get away. So they're like, okay, that's fine. But then the general's saying how we're about to get the real egg back anyway, so it's not a problem. So the one that 009 stole was a fake, but the auction is actually going to be the real egg. So he says, yes, we've lost the fake egg, but we're going to get the real egg back anyway. Does that sound correct?
Yeah. This is where, they have the fake, well, they lost the fake, but they can get the real one back at the auction. Yeah.
Yeah, so we then cut to the auction, which, do you know where this takes place?
Oh, it said Sotheby's. Is that how you say that? Sotheby's on the
Do you know where that is?
I assume somewhere in London. Yeah.
Okay, I assumed London as well. It wasn't too clear.
I think I'm saying that wrong. I think it's Sotheby's you say it. There you go.
Okay. I don't know. I don't even know where that is. I've been to London quite a few times. Couldn't tell you where that is.
Yeah, no clue.
It's a rich part of London, I guess. So we then cut to the auction, and it straight away has the Fabergé egg, and it's being shown saying, hey, now the bidding is going to start on the egg. We see Bond with Jim. I did really like that they have a character just called Jim. It makes the note-taking a lot easier. Yeah. None of these complicated names, none of these foreign names that I don't know how to spell at all. Just Jim.
No Chrissies this time.
Yeah, no Chrissies. It's just Jim, everyone. Jim, Orlov.
Yeah.
Very nice names here. Thank you, guys.
Jim and Jim together, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're right, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's James and Jim.
James and Jim.
The flower pot men. So Bond is there with Jim, and Jim explains to Bond how the Fabergé egg is probably going to get around 250,000 to 300,000 pounds. And then Jim also says, you didn't need to come, Bond, which I think is Bond doing some more cheeky chappy stuff, and Jim actually being a little bit annoyed by Bond, but it's only a very small throwaway line. Mm-hmm. So the bidding then starts at £150,000, and Bond sees a young blonde woman enter the room, so his eyes quickly focuses on that, and we see Bond watching this woman enter, and she approaches a man who's sitting down and sits down next to that man. So the bidding is going on. So everyone's bidding backwards and forward. There's an older gentleman who wants to take a look at the egg, so they bring it over on this cushion, and he takes a quick look, inspects it, decides he's not going to bid. And the man that we saw next to the woman, the blonde woman who sat down, starts bidding. And this man bids £400,000, so well over what it was expected to go over. So we then hear a bid of £420,000, which I think Jim is like, oh, that's crazy. And then looks over. The camera pans from Jim to James to show that Bond had actually done that bid.
What a mad lad.
He's mad. And Jim's like, have you gone mad? And James says, well, let's see how badly he wants it. So Bond also quite funnily decides to inspect the egg himself. There is a reason for this, but he brings the guy over to take a look at the egg because the other guy who's bidding has gone over. So before Bond does his next bid, he goes over and takes a look at the egg, inspects it a bit, brings it close to him, puts it back down. Then he bids 475. And the man goes to 500,000. There's a lot of commotion going on while all this is happening. Everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, this is madness." Lots of rich people murmur going on. So it's meant to be a bit of a crazy scene, or as crazy as an auction scene can get. And we see poor Jim being all stressed out. And eventually Bond says, "No, that's it. We're all fine." And so the mysterious man wins for £500,000. And Jim says, well, what were you playing at? And Bond said, well, it looked like he had to buy. So now that we know that this guy absolutely had to buy this egg because he went for like double the price, now I can find out why. So that was an auction scene for everyone. I hope you enjoyed.
I actually did quite like this scene. Maybe it's just because I used to watch a lot of Bargain Hunt. But
You used to?
Oh yeah, I don't watch it anymore. No. Definitely not. I just quite like Bond in scenes that just aren't necessarily, the most spy things, and it's Bond doing spy work, but in an auction house. It's just a change of scenery, a change of situation, amping up the price for Kamal Khan. Because I think Jim does recognize the man. He does say, "Oh, that's Kamal Khan. He's usually a seller, not a buyer."
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I quite like this little bit actually, and Bond teasing a little bit this Jim guy, and as you say, probably being a bit cheeky and annoying him at times, and but ultimately getting what he needs to get done.
Yeah, it's a bit of fun.
Yeah,
I like it. It does tie into the egg stuff though, which overall is not a bit of fun.
Yes, yeah.
So we then cut to Bond leaving this auction hall, and we see the woman from before enter the car with Khan, the guy who won. It's very weird looking limo. It's like a Mercedes, I think, but it's like a blue long limo. It didn't look like a proper limo. It just looked like a stretched out car.
Yeah, I didn't actually notice too much about the limo, to be honest.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, most people probably don't. But I was looking at that limo. I was like, is that just what limos looked like in the 80s? It's not the very classic limo, but
yeah,
but it doesn't matter anyway. So Bond sees them drive off, and Bond signals to a man in a taxi nearby to follow them. So the man is obviously working with Bond. So Bond says, "Hey, follow that car." Well, he doesn't say that, but he gives them the signal. And then we cut back to M's office, where M is a bit mad, saying, "You had no business bidding on that egg. That was reckless. You shouldn't be doing that. Blah 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 blah." And we see that Bond reveals that he has switched the egg with a fake egg. So the fake egg that 009 had before, that Bond was looking at, he had apparently kept that, and apparently brought that to the auction hall, and apparently when he was inspecting that egg there, he swapped it out. And yeah, so the idea of this, I think, is that they want to try and catch out what's going on here. They don't know what's going on. So by Bond giving them a fake egg, it either means, or I think he explains this, where it either means that he notices it's a fake, which will rattle him up and means that Bond can go and investigate and things like that, or he doesn't notice it's a fake, which I think is what Bond wants, because if he doesn't notice it's a fake, then that means he is in on this fake egg scam, because he was kind of expecting it to be a fake, even though it was explained earlier that it's actually a real egg. All makes sense?
No. This bloody egg, I swear.
It's supposed to be I quite like it, the idea of Bond switching out this egg, but it's supposed to be a win-win situation for them. But they have to do so much explaining to make it make sense for the characters, so Bond can explain it to M that it's a win-win, even though we know it's real, or at least the general thinks it's real, because we saw that before. It probably wasn't worth it in the end.
Yeah, the most I got from this scene is yeah, Bond almost wants them to realize it's fake as a way to, I think you might say, like, smoke them out is the phrase he uses. And I guess, yeah, what you're saying, like, rattle them and hopefully make a bit more attention surrounding it to create a lead he can follow, or something along those lines anyway.
It's something like that. Again, I quite like this small idea, but it's just so complicated and they have to explain it in such a short time. Because this then ends with, the person that was following the limo saw them get on a plane and somehow knew they were going to India or something. But to be fair, they already know who it was. Like, Jim identified it was Khan, so it makes sense that Bond would go to India because this guy's flying to India. Yeah. And we see that Bond has a ticket because I think M's like, oh, well, you better go to India there. And he's like, already got the ticket. I've got to be there in 55 minutes. So Bond leaves and we get M smiling to himself very briefly, which I think is them probably trying to correct what happened in the last film where there was just no balance. I don't think this actor really pulls it off and it still feels a bit clumsy to me, but they are trying to bring it back that M actually does like Bond, even if he does tell him off sometimes when he has to.
This M does seem... I mean, Bernard Lee, the first M, he was pretty grumpy, but as you say, we've had plenty of scenes of him with a little twinkle in his eye and he's got Bond's back. This M, I think he does end up being a lot grumpier. I'm just thinking, especially with License to Kill. So, yeah, I don't love this M, but he's all right, I suppose.
Well, that's sad news to me. I didn't realise we get the same M for that many films.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. He's M for, I think up until, GoldenEye, yeah.
Okay. Because I don't hate him. I just think it's just a fake. It's just a fake. It's like the egg. They've swapped in a fake M, and I'm noticing, and I'm mad about it.
Hashtag not my M.
Not my M. Because it's just such an imitation. I said how I didn't mind him already a couple of times, but the more I think about it, the more I get a little bit mad. And I think that's mostly because you just told me I'm going to have to put up with this for a few more films. So that's made me sad.
Sorry about that. Okay, yeah. So Khan has gone to India. So yeah, Bond's heading there to Delhi specifically, and so over to India.
How do you know it's Delhi? It's so subtle.
Yeah, Bond's in Delhi, and he was told to meet someone from Station I, Sadruddin, by M, I think was his name, or something along those lines.
It's a good effort. I wouldn't even have tried. That was that name.
So he gets off. Was he on a boat? I can't remember how he even gets onto this. I think he might have been on a boat. He gets off and immediately spots this snake charmer, who just so happens to be playing the Bond theme on the whatever instrument that is, the Indian flute thing, which that's like the little fourth wall thing that they have in this one. And I assume that there was an element of like a code name or a code word in this when he was asking about what currency he uses, because how would Bond know that was the guy he need? Well, that's not Sadruddin, but it's still someone who works for the government. So I'm assuming there was something there. I don't know. Maybe I missed something.
No, we don't get explained what it is, but they do that very robotic. Bond says something, man says something back, and then afterwards they're like, hey! Like, they do that.
Yeah. And this guy's name is VJ, who I like how he introduces himself as a special expediter for Universal Exports. I do like how they keep the Universal Exports cover going in this film. And says that Sadruddin is up in a taxi nearby, so they go and find him. And I kind of don't understand why they didn't just have that character, VJ, be Sadruddin, because this other guy is like barely in this film. It's just a case of, as we've mentioned so many times, Bond has to meet this person to then meet this person to go find this person, sort of deal. It's all happening all over again.
I'm trying to think, because he's definitely there, but when the other guy's there, it's when VJ's there as well.
Yeah. There's just no reason for both characters to be on screen. Strange.
I do want to quickly say, though, the reason why I said about that Delhi comment is that when they start, we get some big old shots of the Taj Mahal. Like, just a load of shots being like, look at it. Look at it. Which
right,
I get.
A helicopter goes behind it, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm assuming Bond's in the helicopter, but this all confused me because the helicopter like lands on the river, so I think but it doesn't matter. But yeah, we get a lot of aerial shots here. They're not as nice as the shots we've had in previous films. We've talked a lot about how they set the scene and having these nice big wide shots, and I mean, I guess they kind of do that, but it just looks like generic footage of a very famous landmark. So yeah, I guess I know why they did it, but it's a bit bland by Bond standards.
I think that's kind of my opinion of this whole use of India in this film. It's definitely not to the same level of quality that I think other Bond films have done when they visit a country and they really try to show it off. I mean, we'll see soon enough, but it's just a lot of stereotypes and just very comedic things back to back. And I don't really feel like we got a true, I don't know, it didn't, unlike, for example, From Russia with Love, which, Istanbul, I think they did quite a nice job there. And there's probably others that I'm not remembering right now off the top of my head, but this one just feels a little bit weak in comparison. Anyway, so yeah, Vijay takes Bond to Sadruddin and they drive up to show off where Kamal's rooftop, mountaintop, I suppose it is, palace is, the Monsoon Palace. That's where he lives and it's heavily guarded, but he usually plays backgammon at the hotel club that Bond's staying at, so Bond can have a chance to talk to him there face to face because he's automatically a member. I don't know, the things this film chooses to make dialogue for is really, and now I'm talking about it, it's just really strange how they put in this little line about how Bond is going to be allowed to be in this club. Like, why? Why was that necessary to say, because you're staying at the hotel, you can visit this club? Is that just me overthinking it?
No, you're right. We've come a long way since The Man with the Golden Gun, where he just gets into the hotel for some reason. Like, we assume James Bond is going to get into the casino.
Yeah.
Like, we assume he's not going to go in. It's like, sorry, sir. And he just leaves. It's like, that's fine, guys.
You're not on the list.
Yeah, I'm not seeing Bond. I'm not seeing it. VJ, come on in. I'm seeing a VJ, but not seeing a Bond.
So yeah, after that, a very, very short scene there with Sadruddin. Bond is at the hotel, gets shown his room by this lady, this attendant, and I think he might do a quick check for bugs and stuff. He might have checked the phone or something along those lines, and looks outside the window and spots the woman from the hotel, not the hotel, sorry, from the auction room, the one who sits down next to Khan. I think she's coming out of a car or walking along or something along those lines. And after that, I think we're cutting straight to Bond in the white tux. The white tux makes a reappearance as he's going down into the club of the hotel to go find Kamal Khan playing backgammon. There's one being played already. Khan and Major, I think is just his referred to. Some major guy is in the middle of a game, and the major character is losing quite a lot, and he's trying to beat Khan, who's apparently very good at backgammon and betting loads of money and keeps doubling the bets all the time. And Bond's watching. I think is VJ there? Someone might be there with him.
Yeah, I think so. They're both those guys are there.
Yeah.
Because they're there in like fancy suits as well.
Yeah, because he gives them the money later. Yeah, so they're watching Khan play, and Bond does spot something funny going on with the dice that Khan does with his hands down below. Because, every time that this major keeps betting, and I don't know the rules to backgammon, but getting a double six is good, apparently.
Neither do I, because I thought backgammon was about the board, but they kind of strip this down to like they do in other Bond films, where it's just like, I'm going to roll some dice, and if it's high, then I win. Haha. Like, I'm pretty sure backgammon has a lot more rules than that, but no, apparently roll the dice, get high, get rich, that's it. Like, I think they simplify it a bit.
Yeah, which is good, because I don't know backgammon at all, but yeah, doubles are good, and Khan keeps rolling doubles and basically wipes out this major in terms of money. So Bond steps in and says if he can take his place in terms of the money being bet and everything, which Khan agrees to, and as security for having the money, Bond reveals the real egg, and puts it down on the table and kind of looks for Khan's reaction. And because I guess at this point, well, I don't know actually. Khan would have known his is a fake. I don't know.
I mean, I think so, but Yeah, I think so.
I think
It's
just
not
the sight
clear.
of the same egg is probably enough to realise, oh, something funny is going on here. But yeah, Bond's there sort of being a bit smug and really trying to get under Khan's skin. And just as Bond is about to roll the dice, he says something and says, oh, can I use your dice? Words to that effect, and takes Khan's dice, which are obviously loaded dice to roll double sixes, and then Bond rolls a double six himself and wins a ton of money. So Khan writes a check, and Bond's like, oh, actually, I prefer cash. and one of Khan's very angry, evil-looking henchmen is there, who we see throughout the film. I had no clue what his name is, but just looking in front of me, his name was Gobinder.
Okay.
Crushes the dice, is so angry, and crushes it into dust in front of Bond as a signal of his strength. And there's a really good line. Did I write it down? There's a really good line Khan says when Bond wins. It's like such a good villain line, and I completely forgot it now.
Yeah, it's something like, spend your money quickly, Mr. Bond. Oh, it's something like that, like implying that you better spend this quick because you're not going to have a lot of time with this money.
Yeah. This whole scene, I do like this little scene, mainly because I do like the actor that plays Khan, who does end up being one of the major villains, one of the other ones in this film. He's a very charismatic character. He has quite a good on-screen presence. He's quite slimy, he's quite squirmy, but also at the same time has this really great air about him. And yeah, just little bits in this. I like how Bond doesn't even look when he rolls a dice because he knows it's going to be a double six, and just how smarmy he's being with it all. They made backgammon quite interesting, as you say, a lot by just simplifying the rules, but it makes a change compared to the usual chemin de fer that we usually see.
Yeah, I like this setup. Usually, like, this is a good setup, like Bond calling out on the villains cheating and using that against them, but it's a little bit lame that all he does is like, I'll just use your dice. Oh, I won. Cool. It's not the most clever Bond has been, and it's odd that Khan just goes with it. I didn't quite get that. I get that Khan can't just freak out, say, oh no, I'm cheating, don't use my dice. But I don't quite get why he does that. It felt a little bit weird to me, but it's still pretty solid. It did get me thinking though about Bond in this suit, because it is the white suit again and it does look great. I wonder if with the suits they were trying to do what they were doing with the music, where they were trying to like bring out all the classic stuff and shove it in your face to be like, yeah, it's Bond in his classic white suit, because we get the classic black suit in a later scene as well.
Oh yeah, when he goes to dinner. Yeah. Probably. I mean, one of these things, one of the elements that they definitely do in this film, mainly because I read it when I was doing a bit of background research on this film, is that they definitely try and use the Bond theme quite a lot in this film. Again, as a sign of, never say never again, can't use it. So we're going to use it a lot just to really cement that this is the official Bond. Don't go watch the other one.
Nothing to see there.
Yeah,
come and watch Octopussy. That's where it's at.
Yeah, come listen to All Time High.
God. But also very briefly, Bond does try and speak to the woman who, I don't know if we've heard her name yet.
No, we haven't. We don't hear her name for so long.
Yeah. But she does approach him and Bond goes to buy her a drink and she says no and goes back to Khan. So that happens very briefly here as well.
Yeah. So Khan and his henchmen have gone off, and Bond gets his money that was cashed by the club and gives some to VJ, gives some to the other guy, I've already forgot his name, and keeps some in his jacket, kind of inside breast pocket, and they head off. I'm not quite sure what the next plan was going to be for Bond, but he's clearly made himself known to Khan, so that was job done, and they head out to go drive back in one of the little taxi things.
He said something not great here, and I hope I misheard it, because we get this, they very deliberately show Bond putting all this cash in his jacket and also handing it out, and he gives it to one of the guys and says, oh, that'll keep you in the curry for a few weeks. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Did I mishear that? That's
that's
not great.
That's the exact line. Yeah, this will keep you encouraged. And I thought when I first heard that, I thought, okay, you can take that on on the nose, but maybe there's the phrase you can curry favor. So I googled what he said, thinking maybe it's just a phrase, and even then it wouldn't have been a great thing to use. But all the results were people talking about this film. So yeah, clearly just one of those unfortunate things of the Bond films of its time.
Well, I say keep you in curry all the time. So it's really interesting to see where it came from.
You do say that quite a lot off, when we're not recording. Yeah, I do wonder why.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, but I didn't think it was from this film, but it's such a popular phrase. So it's nice to see the origins. I'm learning a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So I do want to quickly say the evil man, the henchman for the film, as you say, Goldfinger. Also in this one, they do a lot of zoom-ins on his face. Because he has a very evil-looking face. No offense to the man, but it's all very line and pointy, and he's like grrr, crushing these dice in his hand. And something they only do for this character is do these sudden zoom-ins on his face, and we get the first one here. And yeah, it's a little bit, I don't really dislike it, but it's something worth noting about this character. Part of his personality is the fact that they zoom in on him all the time whenever he shows up. Yeah,
he stares a lot, and then they like to focus on his eyes. Not in the same way as Melina from the previous film. This time he's scary. Look at his eyes and how angry he is.
Yeah. So this ends with Bond in, what would you call those things, the taxis?
I don't know.
Because it's like a free wheel taxi where it's someone at the front and you can kind of sit at the back, but it's open. They don't have proper doors or anything. You are just kind of sitting down on these seats that are pointing, facing backwards, and the street is kind of filled with them. So Bond is on the back of them, kind of being very casual, laying back, arm on the side, feeling pretty good about himself. And we see, BJ is driving this little taxi with Bond there, and we see the evil man, who I'm going to call him the evil man throughout this.
Oh, okay.
So he's loading what I thought was a shotgun. I think later we see that it's not quite a shotgun. I think it's a more cartoonish type of gun.
It's like a blunderbuss or something.
Yeah, it's like a blunderbuss, like a very Looney Tunes sort of gun in the end. But he's loading it as he watches Bond leave, and they end up following Bond and BJ through the street. And VJ. Apologies, VJ.
Definitely not BJ.
It's a very different film. But yeah, VJ notices that they're being followed, and it's like, we have company. And he drives really fast and then puts these on the back wheels for a little bit for some reason. And as he's being chased, he cuts through an alley, goes through this big long alley, gets to the end, and they catch up with them. And there's a load of, I guess, ninjas. I guess Indian ninjas. It's not super clear, because I think one of them has this big star that I was all their weapons and the way they're dressed, I was are these ninjas? But then I was do India have ninjas? But I was is there any reason they couldn't have ninjas?
Yeah, I guess whatever the equivalent term is for that. Yeah.
Yeah, so all these guys are there, and they pull up alongside and start fighting VJ and Bond. And VJ is he has a tennis racket and is fighting them off using the tennis racket, which I read this up afterwards, and it's because this character is a reference to someone that the producer knew, so that's why it's like that. I don't think they really explain it. I think they did say he mentioned earlier that he plays tennis, but why you would have a tennis racket?
Well, it's because it's the actual actor himself is a famous tennis player.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah, I guess he was famous in the 80s or something, but that's why they have these really ham-fisted tennis references.
Yeah, it doesn't quite land anymore in 2023.
No.
So he's fighting them off, and Bond is fighting them off as well, and we get some very not great shots of the crowd, where there's a crowd of people, and they all look to the left at the same time, and then it cuts to them fighting again, and they all look to the right, but it just doesn't sync up with anything that's happening. It's just comedic crowd looking oh, what's happening? But it doesn't sync up to the actual chase.
Yeah, he's like, oh, hang on, tennis. Let's try and make it look like they're watching tennis. And we're putting. They even has some tennis sort of when he's with the racket, like hitting them with a racket. It sounds like he's hitting a ball. It's just bizarre.
Just none of it. I think even if you said like, oh, even if I knew it was a tennis player, it just would not land. It's so over the top.
Yeah, no, it's really bad.
So yeah, really bad. So one of these ninjas has this giant kind of, well, it's not really a ninja star, but it is like a metal star, and he stabs Bond. And at this moment, the Bond theme kicks in, because of course. And Bond has been stabbed, but he kicks the guy off, and we see that Bond was stabbed where his money was. And he says, oh, thank goodness for hard currency. Just... I haven't said a lot of the quips so far. Like, there's definitely a few quips. Usually I like to make sure we get them all in. There's definitely a few that I have skipped because I'm not sure if there were any good ones. Like, it's all... Yeah, I guess where I can see where they're coming from, but none of them... I can't remember any that I enjoyed from this film.
There was a terrible... Yeah, I've just spotted there's one I missed from earlier. It's terrible. Where he gives VJ back his flute thing and says, you may need this to play with your asp.
It's just awful.
Awful. Maybe I should not have even gone back to that. Let's just move on.
Yeah, I'll edit that out. That's fine.
Okay, good.
So Bond then throws the cash, which lands in a beggar's bowl, and the beggar's like, oh. Lots of jokes in this scene. And, oh, God. I'm just reading my notes, and it's just making me sad. VJ smashes someone with the tennis racket, and it goes, like, through the racket. And then he's all like, hey, game, set, and match.
Good one.
Because tennis?
Because tennis, yeah.
Because tennis, and... the man, somehow throughout all this, the person who was driving the Jeep that was chasing them has a basket on his head. I couldn't tell you how that happened. I think it was just part of the commotion, and they crash. So VJ is still driving this little car and gets stuck behind a crowd, of which we then see the evil man return with his gun, shoots and hits the car, but doesn't hit them. So they decide to get off and start, or Bond decides to get off at the very least and start running through the crowd. And it's a very packed, busy street in Delhi. He gets like a load of flowers put around his neck, like a lei. I'm not sure if the Indian equivalent is called a lei, but that's what it made me think of.
Also, you missed one really important point.
Oh, no, I didn't, did I?
Did you see the double taken camel?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I may have made that up, actually, but... There is a camel, and I was expecting it to do a double take.
Ah, it was right there, John. Come on.
So easy, especially with the neck. You could have it like really swoop around. Oh well.
It should have at least been there during the tennis scene. But yeah, so Bond is running through this crowd, and he sees a man with a knife. So the evil man is coming to chase him, and there's like a couple of other guys, one with a big old knife, and Bond is trying to get through to escape them. He, for some reason, runs over some hot coals. So this is like Stereotype Plaza, basically.
Oh, it's ridiculous how many they squeeze into this one tiny section. Mad.
Yeah, all these street performers are all in this area, and they all like cover like the stereotypical Indian street performers thing you would expect. So Bond runs over the hot coals, and one of the people, goons, show up to him. They start fighting, and he's fighting someone next to someone who's lying on a bed of nails, and the man who's on the bed of nails gets up because of Bond fighting this guy next to him, and Bond then flips the guy into the bed of nails, and the guy shouts at them, and we get subtitles that says, "Get off my bed." And yeah, Bond then finds a man who's juggling flame torches. He grabs it, starts jabbing at the man with the knife. He then throws the torch at the man with a knife, who then drops his knife to catch it. And
I quite like that, actually.
It's a bit silly. So Bond then just punches him in the face, and that's that. And then someone else is showing up, so Bond pulls a sword out of somebody's throat because a street performer doing that is right there, and jabs it at a goon. That goon then falls onto the burning coals and gets burnt, of which Bond then throws... someone is like cooking something nearby in this hot pot. He knocks that over to the burning coals to make all the fire come up. And eventually Bond gives the sword back to the man he stole it from and meets up with VJ again. And Oh boy.
Yeah.
Like, God, this was really bad.
This was really bad. This was 2 minutes of just pure stereotypes, really, back to back to back. And this is kind of what I was referring to earlier with the whole India thing. I just think there's so much of this where they just use India, but they use it so superficially and so stereotypically, and it's just, I imagine, it's probably bad then, but it's just like really, it's really bad now because it's just not interesting, and it's like, yeah, I get the point, I get what you're trying to do, sword swallowing, hot coals, and it's just it's just bad. I don't really know.
Well, it's meant to be a comedy scene, right? Like, the idea is that you're meant to recognize all this and laugh, and with the tennis stuff as well, like, it's supposed to be funny. I just don't think they ever really do action comedy all that well in Bond films. Like, you might have a small moment that's kind of funny, but when you have these action comedy scenes, especially one that is just playing off like such blatant, unoriginal stereotypes, it's just like, it's just a bit sad. Like, I'm not laughing, I'm not into the action, none of this kind of works. And I think even if you say, like, whether this is offensive enough, I don't know, but even if you took that out of it, I don't think anything that really happens for here is all that interesting.
No.
Like, none of it works on its own, even as like a comedy or an action bit, and it just makes this scene just seem so awful. And I will also have to just quickly say that the bed of nails is so blatantly fake.
Yeah.
Because you see them all bend when the guy gets thrown onto it. And I get that maybe they couldn't have actually thrown a man on a bed of nails, but like, I guess it proves how much a comedy scene this is meant to be, because rather than this being something quite gruesome or anything, it's just a silly, like, man falling on nails and all the nails are bendy and the man's all mad because he's like, oh, get off my nails. It's just, when you have an action comedy scene that's not funny or interesting action, it's just sad.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's not funny. There was too much in there. Way too much in there. It's going a mile a minute, which actually is probably a good thing given how quickly it's over, this whole chase bit. But just such a stone's throw from what we had before, and it makes me sad.
It's not over yet, though, Joe.
Oh, no. Plenty more to come.
So Bond is now with Vijay again in their taxi, and we see the evil man get back into his car as well. And Bond asks Vijay for the money, of which he's all like, easy come, easy go. And Bond then throws it into the street, shouting like, Ruby! And a big crowd of people rushes over to it, which slows down the evil man from chasing them. Oh, so
I can feel you're like you. I'm glad you described this bit, not me. Sorry.
Well, it's just makes me sad because, like, they did this joke twice, but they did the whole Bond throwing the money thing twice because I guess they just thought both versions of it were so hilarious that the beggar getting the money is hilarious, and then a load of people in the streets just going mental over money is also meant to be hilarious.
One or the other.
Yeah. Well, none, actually.
Or none.
But eventually, so because the evil man has been slowed down, Vijay drives through a poster on a wall, which is then instantly replaced. So he smashes through, then straight away we see a new version of the poster come out, and the evil man gets to the poster and just sees a brand new poster and is just confused. And he just walks off. Bond then says, it certainly pays to advertise. So there you go. Laughter and applause, please.
No.
Okay. And we see Vijay and Bond have entered the Indian version of Q Branch, of which Q is there and he gets a nice little moan about flying all the way over to do this. And there's quite a lot of back and forth here. Like, it's quite intense. Like, these are the scenes with Bond and Q that I kind of think of most. Not this scene in particular, but the way they kind of work here, where it's lots of gadgets in the background being tested, and we see Bond being like, oh, I've misplaced my PPK, and he also says, somebody has stuck a knife in my wallet, which is a hole for his jacket, and is like, oh, they've missed you. What a pity.
Yeah, Q is very grumpy from the get-go here.
Yeah, this is kind of why, this is quite hammed up, I guess, but this is kind of what I think of. if you want a very like to the point Q and Bond scene where it's like Bond being very cheeky the whole time, like no, he knows what he's doing. He knows he's winding up Q, and he's also being successful. So it's Q being like, now pay attention, or please return the, it's all of this. But this time they're in India, which means there's some Indian things that we get where there's a man climbing a rope, like a snake charming rope or something, I guess it's meant to be, and he starts climbing it, but the thing's meant to be stiff, but then it like falls down as the guy climbs and he falls, of which Bond says, having problems keeping it up, Q.
Like... Yeah, not the most classy of quips from Bond. Mind you, what are, I suppose.
Yeah, not in this film. And it's like, it's too old for those jokes. But...
I mean, maybe it actually does, all right? So maybe it's like a touchy subject for Q. Doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, very rude. So they then sit down eventually, and we get another one where there's a door with spikes that opens, and Bond's like smashing Q or something. So, so they then so Bond still has the egg. So he never gave up that egg because he won the game, and he was being chased to get the egg back, but they didn't get it. So he still has it. So he gives it to Q, and Q talks about this homing device. And in that little model that's inside the egg, I'm sure everyone remembers that when I mentioned it. And he places a homing device within that, inside the egg. And he then shows Bond the gadget of the film, a fountain pen. And this is multi-purpose. If you kind of spin it at the tip of the pin, it spits out acid, and that acid can melt metal. And also the pen holds an earpiece, so if Bond puts that earpiece in, he can hear where the bug is that's inside, like the tracker, the device. There's a radio in there, so Bond can hear what's going on. And then also he reveals that the watch has a tracker, so Bond can it beeps when it's close to the egg, so Bond can use his watch to find where the egg is or find where the tracker is inside the egg. And it was at this point where I was really getting exhausted doing notes, because it's not just the story scenes that are really confusing and packed in. Like, all the scenes are kind of like this. So what I've kind of described, I think, doesn't sound that crazy compared to the other films, where it's like, oh yeah, Bond goes to Q branch or MI6 in a different country and then gets debriefed and gets a new gadget. Like, that sounds very standard. And this time it happens to be a fountain pen. But even this scene is just really like packed to the point where it's just so easy to miss stuff, and it makes it very hard when you're trying to do notes for a film, when you have to try and get everything down to talk about, because it's like, just slow down, please, just a little bit.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, on the face of it, it's just okay. Q is adding a tracker and a microphone to this egg, and there's a pen that spits acid. There you go, job done, right? But something about this film and the fact that it is 2 hours and 10 minutes, everything is just so drawn out.
Well, I think drawn out, but I think it's interesting because it's not drawn out, it's also densely packed. Like, I would say it's quite interesting, the film. I would not describe it as slow-paced. There's just too much stuff.
Yeah, I suppose that's a fairer way of putting it, yeah.
Yeah, like The Man with the Golden Gun was very slow-paced. Like, there was clear padding in here. I would say this film, despite being, I want to say, the second longest Bond film up to this point, 131 minutes. The only one that's been longer is On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which had quite a lot going on. This is 131 minutes, and it still moves really quickly, and it's still so easy to miss stuff. And it's like the worst of both worlds, where it's like, it's both long and confusing. It's like, how did you do that? Like, how did you make the second longest Bond film and still jam pack it with stuff that it's so easy to miss things as you go along?
It's okay though, because after all this confusion, you get a very easy to understand gadget, which Bond gets to play around with. I understood that quite clearly. Thank you very much.
Go on then.
Okay. Thanks. There's also a liquid crystal display in the new technology of 1983, I guess back then, which Bond then spots a camera attached to the monitor showing this display, and walks around and has a little go with the camera pointing it, and just so happens to be this very beautiful lady in the background working in Q Branch, sat down with a lot of cleavage on show, and so Bond takes this as an opportunity to, in the most childish possible manner, zoom in and out of this woman's breasts, and obviously Q spots that and says, "Oh, don't be so immature, 007, that sort of thing." But it's so there's like this very specific cut-in shot of what's meant to be the visual of this like zooming in and out of these boobies, and it's like, haha, boobies, funny. It's just pathetic. I hate it. Bond wouldn't do that, would he? Come on.
I don't think so. Not in this way. It would be a lot. If he did, it would be a lot quicker. But this is like, he zooms right in and leaves it there, and that's it. And the woman, I think, notices because it's on like 6 different TVs.
Yeah,
and it's just fine with it. That's what I think. It's one of those where like the world doesn't react properly to it. Like he's acting like a child, and only Q's were like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
But like somebody else should be like, "Okay, Bond," or the woman should be annoyed or something, right? Like something to ground it a bit more. Like she should just get up. Like, but no, she just sits there, looking at TV screens, looking at her cleavage, while Bond's like, like
it's just also like, the speed of the zooming in and out is. I mean, we've said it's how like there's so many parts of this film that is pure comedy. This is one of them. It's just this ultra fast zooming in and out, and it's not Bond's finest moment in Q Branch. I really dislike how this whole scene ends, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think Q and Bond's chemistry is still pretty good, which is nice. Not as good as the last film, but still nice to see them go back and forth. But yeah, this whole scene. It's interesting that most of the Q Branch scenes are actually not been very good.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think this is the thing as well, is where we are seeing all these so close together and we're getting all these Q scenes back to back. We are noticing that. Whereas if someone had asked me that before, I'd say, "Oh yeah, the Q Branch scenes are great. They're always good fun. There's always a bit of something going on in the background, and Q acting all doddery and telling off Bond." I would have said they're like really enjoyable. But I just think, and they're not terrible, but they're definitely not great. They're just there a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think they try and mix up the formula and it just doesn't work. But yeah, Bond and Q are always usually a good time. It's just they usually put a load of stuff around it. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But it's just sad to see that sometimes it's actually quite a lot of the time it doesn't work.
Yeah. So how does that Q Branch scene end? I know that he gets his jacket repaired, and
that's it. He just gets the pen, he gets the jacket, and he's good to go.
Okay then. So after that, Bond heads back to the hotel, and he is stopped by one of the workers there and says, "Oh, your table is ready, sir." And Bond's, I didn't reserve a table, and there's a lady waiting for you. And he goes over, and it's that lady from the auction. We still don't know her name. In my notes, I'm just put that lady. I have nothing to go by. It's kind of crazy how long they do not explain what her name is. But she's there having all this kind of dinner and champagne set up for Bond to have dinner with. And she's basically there to explain, Khan wants the egg. Give him the egg. He wants to trade the egg for your life sort of deal. And there is a little bit more. There's a little bit that they talk about. I didn't write any of it down. It really didn't seem anything of note. This woman comes and takes a photo of Bond at one point, which Bond correctly assumes is probably for Khan as some sort of means to find Bond if he needs to. But yeah, there's a little bit of back and forth about making memories or something along those lines together, and I don't know. Is there anything there interesting?
No, not really. Like, at this point, I assumed that she was the Bond girl, but then I remember, well, she can't be the Bond girl. But they've spent quite a bit of time, or Bond has been following her for quite a bit, but we don't get many scenes with her, even though like she's been in the film quite a bit, and the chemistry just isn't really there. But I guess they don't really have a lot of time for the chemistry. It's just, pretty Bond woman, pretty Bond girl hanging out with Bond. And they have dinner because that's what they do, but it's really nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, so she wants the egg still. So they go back to Bond's room and they eventually sleep together. They're in bed, sharing some champagne. or running out of champagne and sharing a cup of it together. This is where I put that I felt like Roger looked really old here. I think it's partly because of like the fact he's naked, well, not fully naked, but showing a lot of skin, and also because of the age of the actress, to really just kind of makes it even more apparent together. But also that there is just some very strange kissing going on here. Like, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but the way they kiss is, first of all, there's some very gross noises, like kissing noises. I've never really noticed this in a Bond film before, but in this one, it's like some weird ASMR stuff going on, but it's like wet, and I was like, "This is none of this, please." Kind of gave me the shivers. But also, the way she kisses him is like she's biting his face off. I was like, "What's going on with what's going on with the chemistry here? Who told them to kiss like this?"
I'm gonna back you up on this one, and I say I did also notice.
Did you?
That the kissing was weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like she just opens her mouth way too much. It's like they're really out of sync.
Yeah.
Like they're kissing like how fish would.
Have they never? I think I may have mentioned that I'm not a big fan of the way Roger Moore. It's just so weird to talk about this. I'm not a big fan of how Roger Moore kisses in these films, because it often seems like he's sucking the soul out of these women. Like you always see his cheeks like suck in. I'm like, how much force are you applying here? How much suction are you applying to this? But in this one as well, it's the woman, the other one, like biting his face off, and as you say, they're just not in sync. A very strange thing to criticize, but it did bug me and also gross me out a little bit.
Well, it's weird because, as you say, I've never thought about that. You're obviously inspecting Roger's
every
mouth
time,
frequently. Yeah,
every time.
Freeze frame. But for me, I've never thought about it until this film, and it's a weird thing at film number 13 to be like, "Well, actually, what's going on there? Why don't?" Because you would think they would just reshoot it or something, right? It's just
no time.
In so many ways, it's just sloppy.
Oh no. Bond notices a tattoo on this lady. I mean, I do know her name, so I'm going to say it now. We don't, if you're watching, you don't know it yet. Her name is Magda. He spots a tattoo of an octopus on her, and she goes, "Oh, that's my little Octopussy." There you go. There's the film title dropped in.
They should have played the Bond theme right there.
just the twang.
As Roger Moore's eyebrow raises to learn.
And yeah, they go back to kissing and sleeping together. The next morning, actually, she might have said something about her history there. I don't know.
It doesn't matter. I also like how casual you're being with this, because like the film kind of does this as well, where you're supposed to just be like, "Oh yeah, that's her Octopussy tattoo. That's fine. Moving on." It's like, wait. Can we talk a little bit about the tattoo, please? But they just move on. They go back to like awkwardly kissing each other some more. But it's like, that's what? No, what was that?
It's the name of the film. Is there anything more to that? And there is eventually, but yeah, it is just they do brush over it. And then in the morning, or at least sometime later, she's got up. Bond wakes up and she's already out of bed and she's getting ready to leave, and she's very very awkwardly stolen the egg, because there was a shot earlier on, you saw the egg kind of in Bond's jacket on a chair. So she's dressing up and right in front of a big mirror as well, might I add, stealing this egg. But I think obviously the point is that Bond now wants it to be stolen because it has got the tracker and it's got the microphone in it. So I think he's just sort of playing along with it and not pointing it out. But she's taken the egg and goes towards the window, and there's a little back and forth, and Bond says something, and I can't remember what it is, but it leads to her in a way saying goodbye, and the way she leaves is by tying like a sort of scarf thing that she's wearing around the edge of the ledge, and then just falling backwards and sort of twirling her way down, because Gobinder, and it might be Khan as well, but I know the henchman's there ready to pick her up at the bottom in a car. And I quite liked the way she did that. I mean, we don't really get much from this character, but I did like her exit there. It was a good exit.
It's nice. Yeah, I don't know how real this stunt was. Probably no, because it makes no sense. But it did start making me thinking, like, for a film that's set in India, they sure don't have a lot of like I feel like surely it seems because she's just a white woman and she's the one kind of in this kind of Indian robe doing the spin. And it did make me think like, yeah, there's no Indian Bond girl in this film. And it feels like this character is probably the one that should have been Indian, but instead she's just like a blonde white woman.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I mean, you can kind of, it's bad that you can kind of imagine why they wouldn't have done this. And it's very much like a sort of whitewashing here going on with some characters. I mean, I don't know in terms of, I think maybe that I did read something about the Octopussy character that we'll see soon. Maybe they wanted them to be more of Indian heritage, but obviously that's not who we got. We ended up getting someone we've seen before. But yeah, you're spot on. It would have been nice to have someone at least Indian in this film. Apart from
we
VJ.
won't go into it too much, but yeah, a lot of these characters probably shouldn't have just been like white people. But like most of this film is a load of white people when like their backgrounds are implying that they're not, like they're from different countries, and it's just a little bit weird. Like Khan is, I want to see where the actor was from. He was born in
French.
Yeah, he's a French actor, even though it's meant to be like an Afghan prince living in India, and it's just all a bit weird. And it makes the stereotypes, I think, stand out more, because when they do have an Indian person, they feel way more stereotypical, because who was supposed to be the more grounded Indian characters are just kind of played by white people. It's just like, okay, this is odd.
Yeah, spot on. Oh, also one point, Bond does check his watch just to check that the tracker is working, and yeah, it's pointing towards her Magda, who did have the egg at that point. So just a kind of little reminder to the audience about this is how Bond is tracking the egg on this watch, a little red dot beeping and moving around. But yeah, as she goes down the window, Bond is knocked out by Govinda and taken away somewhere.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't think I have anything else to really say about this scene. Awkward chemistry there between those two, but it's over.
It's over.
We're still not over the egg stuff, so
no,
I can't remember when the egg stuff gets wrapped up, but we're still not over the egg stuff.
It's quite near the end when we last see the egg, unfortunately.
Yeah. I was talking, bit of a tangent, but we were talking about how, like, why don't the opening credits go more into the theme of the film to tie that visual identity a bit more? But I'm kind of glad they didn't for this one, because it would have just been the egg.
Yeah.
Just in, like, women coming out of eggs. Would have been
hatching out of eggs.
Yeah, and, like, guns shooting eggs or something. Like, that's what it would have been, because this film is all egg.
It really is. Egg and circus.
Oh, God. So, anyway, so then we cut to this big rowboat, like a very big rowboat, and we see Khan standing in the middle holding the Fabergé egg, and all the women, all the people rowing are just women for some reason. And Khan is like, come on, ladies, or something. And they then arrive, and they're going to the palace that we saw earlier, I'm pretty sure. This got confused. Even this palace stuff confused me, because later on in the film, we're introduced to a separate palace, which is like a floating island. But that's different to this palace. There's like two different palaces in this film.
Yeah, I assume one of them is Khan's and one of them is Octopussy's, right?
Yeah, that's the whole point. But it's just one of those where it's just, they don't establish these places very well. But
no,
we saw this earlier where this is where all the guards were, where VJ showed Bond saying that's Khan's palace. So now Khan is returning to his palace, and it's very nice, very fancy. There's like a pool, because there's always a pool in this country apparently. And a lot of women kind of just hanging out, and we see some... No, maybe this is the island and not the palace. Because he's going to speak to Octopussy.
Yeah, because we don't actually see her, but yeah, you're right, this must be that.
Oh my God. That's so I even... Okay, so that's how confusing it is. I just got that wrong. But hopefully you can understand why I got that wrong, because they pointed out the palace from before, but I'm pretty sure the palace and the island are two different places.
Well, yeah, one of them's on top of a cliff.
Yeah, because the end of the film takes place in Khan's palace, but this is Octopussy's
floating palace, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure this is not what they showed before when Fiji said, look over there.
Oh.
That's why I'm confused. Or maybe he did, but I'm pretty sure he didn't say that's Octopussy's palace. I'm pretty sure he was like, that's Khan's palace.
Yeah, one of them was called Monsoon Palace, which is Khan's. You see what's happening here, folks?
It's just this is the ultimate don't think about it film, but if you don't think about it, then you've just got nothing.
Yeah. Catch 22.
You have to think about it or else you're going to sleep. So a lot of women escort Khan to the back of the palace, and we see some fish in tanks, and he enters a room round the back and has the egg, and he's showing somebody the egg. And he's all like, I thought you would be pleased, but the woman, so we don't see her face, we just hear her talk, and she's very upset. And Khan says, don't worry, we have the thief, the person that stole the egg. And I think she's saying like that person should be killed or something. But eventually she's like, so who is the thief? And he's like, well, it's a British agent. And eventually he says it's James Bond. And the mysterious woman says, bring Bond to me. Of where Khan says, I don't think that's a good idea, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's you. And we see the woman then feeding an octopus. And I have to say, for all this film's faults, I actually did quite like this scene. The way they kind of set up, I'm going to spoil it, Octopussy. Her voice is actually really good. She actually really does bring some, I guess, dignity, I guess is the word I'm thinking of, to the way she speaks. There is a real kind of power and confidence behind it. And you get that instantly from this scene, even though you don't actually see her at all.
Yeah, no, they do a good job with that aspect of hiding the character and how you can see her reaction to the name James Bond as she's feeding the octopus. And they sell a lot with just the visuals there. And it's a shame that doesn't really, I mean, it's not like a Blofeld level of hiding the character sort of thing, but it's nice that they do it at least a little bit here.
Yeah, I like the effort. And I think this actress does pull it off quite well as well. Although it goes back to what we were saying, how like there's just too many characters and too many villains in this film, because we're a decent way into this film, not long enough in my opinion, but we're a decent way into this film and we're being introduced to someone else in an all mysterious way when we've already had the general and then Khan, and Khan's reporting to someone who's now about to be introduced, who's like a core part of the film. Like,
Yeah.
Why is this happening so late?
I don't know. I forgot about the general already.
Yeah, right? Like, it feels weird talking about the general, but he's a core part of the film, but we've just introduced to other characters who are core part of the films. Because, as I said before when we were talking about Russia, like, we're now just in India, doing stuff in India.
Was the general definitely this film? Maybe you're thinking it was the film before.
Oh, that would make more sense, right? So we then cut to Bond waking up on a bed, and we hear some beeping in the background, which is his watch. So he takes a look at the watch, so he's still tracking the egg. And Bond goes to open the window, and he sees that there's bars on them. So, okay, I think this is what's going on. So Bond is in Khan's palace and has been locked up there.
Yeah.
And Khan then returns from Octopussy's island palace thing back to his palace.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense. It kind of, because I was wondering where the hell is Bond? Like when he was waking up, I was like, so where is this place? But yeah, it's Khan's lair, palace area. So he tries to leave, but he sees windows on the bar, these big metal bars, and kind of sees this complex outside, and he sees Khan enter, pull up in a car and get out. And Bond is then looking around, trying to find a way to leave. All the doors are locked. He goes to, he opens the wardrobe, sees some clothes. A man comes in to give him clothes. Bond tries to leave, but the evil man from before, the one with the zoom-ins, come in, and he just says, dinner, 8 o'clock, locks the door. And then we cut to Bond in the classic black tux being escorted by the evil man to dinner. And this is why I think they were like cramming in these suits, because normally he would be saving that for a bar or a casino or something like that. But this is simply like he's wearing his classic black tux, but all he's doing is going for dinner with Khan.
Yeah, Khan has a very high threshold for, for outfits. You got to look your best.
Yeah. I mean, you got to look really nice, even though what you're about to eat is really gross.
Yeah, that's right.
So Bond then sits down in this large dinner table where Khan and Madna, I think, right?
Yeah, Magda.
Magda, yeah, that's the one. They're sitting there, so it's very fancy. It's a very classic setup where Bond is having dinner with the villain, and everything's all very proper and nice, and it's basically them having a conversation. So Bond is asking, well, I can't remember exactly how it goes around, but I think Bond is asking why he's even here. Like, why am I even being kept captive? And Khan's saying we don't have all the answers. Of which Bond is like, well, what if I don't feel like talking? And then they go a little bit back and forth on torture methods, where Bond's like, well, how are you going to use thumb screws and hot coals? And it's like, oh no, we're much more sophisticated than that. And says they're going to use some sort of like psychedelic compound, of which Bond then says, well, isn't that going to cause permanent brain damage? And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So some stakes there, but this doesn't really go anywhere. So then the food comes up and gets plonked down as Bond is talking, and it's a stuffed sheep head. So it's like the skull of a sheep that you can see, although it's still got like a load of the meat on it and it's been stuffed. And for some reason at this point we zoom in on the evil man, the henchman. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And Khan is kind of talking a bit, and he pops out the eye of his sheep head and eats it. And so the idea here is that Bond is kind of disgusted by this. Like, I don't think Bond eats any of this. And it is kind of supposed to be like kind of a joke on this, like, oh, look how gross this sheep's head is. But it really is gross.
It is gross.
Like, it's horrible to look at.
I don't understand this. As in, I assume they do not eat stuffed sheep's head in India like that anyway. So is it a comment on like, oh, foreign country, crazy food? Do you know what I got vibes of is Indiana Jones and the whole like chilled monkey brain scene. It's like exactly the same sort of setup where there's a dish put in front of the main character and it's this really horrible looking thing and everyone else is eating it and loving it. And then, I just don't get it.
I think you're right, yeah, but it just kind of removes something here because they kind of had something going with Bond and Khan where they're going back and forth and talking about torture methods. Is, that's a pretty solid dinner talk for villains. That works quite well, but it just, so much of it just gets sucked away when they're just, Bond is staring at a stuffed sheep's head and Khan then eats an eyeball. I'm just like, I mean, I guess it's meant to gross you out a bit, and I don't want to be too judgmental in case anyone does eat sheep eyes. Fill your boots, I guess. But like for this sort of scene, I just don't think it adds anything. It just takes away, and Khan just seems like it just makes him seem a bit odd in a way that doesn't elevate his character.
Yeah, it really does. I was saying earlier that I liked the actor who plays Khan. I think he has got quite a good charisma to him, but he's not really I wouldn't say he's a great villain. And I think especially this scene in particular kind of makes him seem a bit more, it's not meant to be pure comedy role, but it definitely takes away from any sort of intimidation or actual fear that this villain might have in like when he's with Bond face to face. And yeah, talking about torture, great, love that stuff, and how flippant he is with it will cause brain damage. That's all good stuff. But then he just slurps at this at this sheep eye, and it kind of saps all that immediately.
You don't think it would have been better in Dr. No if they came out with a sheep's head when they're talking at the dinner table?
And then Dr. No tries to eat it, but his metal hands like grip too tight and it just bursts.
Oh, he just gets,
And he's like, oh, not again. These blasted hands.
Oh.
So dinner finishes and Bond kind of cheekily asks if anyone would like a nightcap. After dinner, asks Magda, and no, and then even asks the henchman as well. No, okay, fine, and is put back in his room, locked back in his room with a guard outside. And as that's happening, you see, or maybe not be quite yet, but there is a helicopter that's arriving to the place. Bond uses the pen acid gadget to melt the bars away from his room. Which is a good idea. I don't really like how as soon as he did it, suddenly the bars became very bendy. Like, if you see, he just grabs it and bends it really easily. I don't even think he would have needed to like loosen the ends. He could have just bent them in the middle.
Yeah, very fake.
Very, very fake. And yeah, he kind of shimmies outside onto the edge of this palace and works his way around and kind of passes by Magda's room and sees her getting undressed, and there's a bit of a there, but thankfully they don't do anything else. They just carry on because yeah, she's like it's really bad. But anyway, as that's
There's
happening,
the bird as well.
oh yeah, that's where the bird jump scare is. There's always one with John Glenn, and there it is. The helicopter is landing, and it's Orlov. General Orlov finally makes a reappearance in this film, and obviously he's there to go speak to Khan about all this fake jewelry stuff. Bond gets down somehow. I can't remember how.
Well, he climbs into the Magda's room.
Does he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So he panics because all the lights come off because the helipad is about to land, so all the lights are coming on, so he just has to get away. So he jumps in Magda's room as she kind of like moves away at the right second, so he's like hiding in there for a bit.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, because doesn't she spot Bond at one point?
Yeah, because Bond leaves the room following the watch tracker, and then as Bond leaves, Magda actually just kind of smiles because she noticed Bond leaving and just didn't say anything.
Which I guess is setting up to what eventually happens. Yeah. Orlov and Khan go down to this room where there's loads of jewelry, and it's sort of a bit of a very brief explanation of the plan where Orlov is saying something along the lines of, I get what I want with this plan, and you'll get the jewelry. Explaining why Khan's in this, because he wants this real jewelry. No, this is the fake jewelry, but he wants the real jewelry eventually that they're going to swap it with, because Khan has had his men reproducing all of these very valuable Russian, like what is it called? Something Star, one of them.
Something like that.
Yeah, the Something Star is like one of the ones that comes up quite a lot. And Bond is there tracking them, as you say. He's got his watch, and he's also got the pen nib, the microphone sort of receiving device, because they have got the egg in that room with Orlov and Khan. And as Bond is listening, down near the door, outside the door, Magda's drying her hair, which gives interference. Bit of an oversight there from Q, I think. Just the hairdryer causes interference.
I guess Q never would use a hairdryer, would he? So he never tested it.
Oh, good point. Yeah. So yeah, Bond is missing out some of the plot points of what Orlov is explaining, but he does get just in the nick of time. He does hear something about 1 week from today at Karl Marx stat. So that gives Bond the next location to investigate. In this little scene with Orlov and Khan as well, this is where he smashes the egg, right? Because he's like, oh, this fake has got in the way too much, so I'm going to smash it. And then you get this grimace from Khan, who knows it's the real egg.
No.
No?
No, because it is the fake egg. Because Bond swapped it out. And this is the one with the tracker. And the reason why Khan grimaces is because he spots the tracker inside the egg.
Are you sure?
I think so.
Because Bond got the real egg from the auction house. And then that would have been the one they used for Q, right? And then that one is the one that's stolen by Magda. So this is the real egg.
Let me think. Because... Now I'm not too sure.
I thought that's why he
it was a
had
fake
that reaction.
Egg. You might be right. Khan might be grimacing because it is the real one. I just assumed that was part of the fact that he sees the tracking bug, which is why he's all like, ah. But maybe the timing of the scenes don't add up. But I assumed because the egg that Khan has is fake. But obviously Bond has to get that egg to put the tracker in, which he never stole the egg of Khan, did he? He just kept the one that he swapped out, which was the real one.
Yeah, but then Magda stole the real one off of him.
Yeah. Unless they actually were both fake the whole time.
I guess the point is, the egg is smashed, and the microphone
What
is
is the
revealed.
point, Joe?
I don't know.
Please let me know what the point is.
You said it yourself. Khan does spot that there is something, a little microphone in there, so that's a cause for concern from his point of view. Bond is still outside and hears some people coming. It's because I think Khan told Gobinder to go take the fake jewellery to Orlov's helicopter, and now they're coming back. So Bond hides in this room nearby that's full of it's full of like meat, like I think there's pigs and stuff hanging up, but there's also some dead bodies hanging up. I guess that's where they just put all dead things in there. I don't know. I assumed it would be like where they keep the food, but then why are there just some dead people in there? I don't know.
It's just meant to be a bit of a jump scare, isn't it? A bit of a, oh, look how tough these guys are because there's just dead corpses hanging up on hooks.
Not very hygienic.
No, but then we know what they think about hygiene, don't we?
Yeah. As Bond's looking in the door and they're leaving, the henchman Gobinder does notice something. Kind of looks in there, so Bond... Well, I don't know what... I guess you don't actually see this happen, but Bond climbs inside one of the bags that's in there.
It's just kind of implied.
It's implied.
Bond takes a look, and because they don't quite reveal it yet, but they
it
up enough that Bond could have climbed in. They don't actually they just don't show it.
Yeah. So he's in the clear for then, and then that's that. I'm saying that in that tone because I'm pretty sure the next scene we get is the hunting scene, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the next day, I presume. Well, I don't know. It's daylight, and it definitely wasn't daylight before, right? So I don't know how much time he was spent in that bag. But
I get. Yeah. I guess the idea is that he was just locked in there the whole time, but those people, yeah.
Oh, because he locks the door, doesn't he? Yeah, you're right. The henchman locks the door after him.
Yeah. So Bond actually can't leave, which is why he has to get in the body bags to escape.
Right. So,
but they also do know that Bond has escaped because they want to go and kill Bond because the general's like, go and kill Bond. And now they're going to do it, but they notice that Bond has escaped.
Right. So
it all just makes sense, Joe. Don't worry about it.
Oh yeah, when you're watching it, it's easy. You're
just
getting
flies by.
It really does. So the next day, Khan is on elephant back, ready for a hunt. Got his gun, and there's loads of other people there, and the henchman is there as well. I think he's got his own elephant, and there's just tons of people, and they're walking into sort of a forest area. A couple of the guards bring out some body bags, which I assume they're going to feed to some animals because you see him throwing things into this big pile of bones and stuff, and yeah, Bond is one of them because when they put down this body bag, he makes like an oof noise, which these two guards, they just don't really. I mean, they clearly hear it, but they do nothing to worry about. Sometimes corpses just make noises, I guess. But yeah, as they're opening the bodies and getting rid of them, Bond makes this scary noise.
Yeah, like a spooky goes like, oh.
He goes, ooh, and jumps out the bag and has a chance to escape.
Because the two men, they don't like, oh God, let's shoot this guy. They just run off scared.
They're just scared by this zombie, clearly, or mummy, or something that they they think is happening. Which gives Bond a chance to escape. And Joe, can I leave this bit with you because this scene is just it's too much. It's just too much. I'm looking at my notes here. I'll help out.
I'll try. So the general idea is that they instantly see Bond.
Yeah.
And they're instantly like, right, there he is. And Khan's like, let the sport commence. So it is an absurd amount of people who are here at this point in time. Like you would kind of imagine like it's Khan on an elephant, maybe someone else on an elephant, and like 5 dudes or something. No. It's like 30 odd guys with guns and like 5 elephants all starting to chase Bond through this Indian forest or jungle. I guess jungle is probably more correct.
Yeah. Jungle.
So Bond just starts running, and we get all this just more absurd stuff. So we quickly get a shot of a tiger, just because tigers, and Bond runs into a spider web and gets spun up in it a little bit, and there's a poisonous spider that he just kind of gets rid of, and
He just squishes it.
yeah, he just like knocked it down. He's like, get off.
It's proper like stupid bug you go squish now level of stuff. He just squish and there's this green goo on his arm.
Yeah, so he gets rid of that, and then it's just lots of shots of Bond running through the forest or the jungle while everyone else is kind of chasing. Again, a massive pack of people chasing Bond through this kind of high grass in the jungle as well. And eventually Bond meets up with that tiger. Like, they show a shot of a tiger, and then later Bond meets up with it, and the tiger roars, kind of jumps out at Bond, and he just says, sit. So the tiger sits. And then Bond gets away. What?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Khan then, I think, shoots at Bond or goes, like, the evil man shoots at Bond, somebody shoots at Bond, and we see that Bond is, like, completely surrounded. So his plan is to just completely lie down in the grass. So everyone kind of surrounds the area, but I'm guessing they don't know exactly where he is. They just know he's nearby. And as Bond is lying down in this grass hiding, he notices something and sees a snake on his legs starting to spin around, of which he tells it to hiss off. So there you go.
Hiss off.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say that for this whole film, I suppose.
Yeah. So Bond he kicks off the snake. He's very sweaty at this point, which is nice, but it's now never the same. Roger can't. He's just not on the same level as Sean. I think I've already said this, but
you're so right.
So he then, and this is really confusing, this bit, because it's framed that he has been surrounded by an absurd amount of people and elephants, but somehow Bond is then just underneath one of the elephants and removes the strap because people are riding elephants, so there's like this kind of, I don't know what you would call it, but like a saddle, I guess, that people sit on. And he undoes the strap, and then the man shoots his gun, because I think Bond then gets off, and then he falls off which Khan then shoots at Bond, but Bond just gets away. It's so confusing. And then it's just more chasing, and just as it's about to be surrounded again, Bond sees a load of trees and vines, so starts swinging through the vines like Tarzan, and they start playing like Tarzan George of the Jungle sounds over the top, like,
Yep.
as he's swinging on all these different vines. And it's I just want to get to the end of this before we start exploding. He then lands in some water, because he eventually does his Tarzan act, and there's a leech on him, which he just burns off real quick.
Yep. Yeah.
And Bond, after getting from this small puddle of water, finds out he's right next to a river, of which he sees a crocodile very quickly. So he's in one part of the river and sees a crocodile, and then gets out, but then sees a boat full of tourists, of which Bond kind of wades through and shouts, "Hey, hey!" And he gets on, and it turns out a load of American tourists are on there, so they're very over the top friendly, like, "Come on now, buddy, you're just keeps calling him buddy." And Bond waves to Khan, and because now he's gotten away on the boat, and then all the American tourists say, "Oh, look at these guys, look how cool, look at that elephant," and start taking pictures. And like, this is just exactly the same as the scene we had before with the taxi, only like a jungle version of it.
Yeah.
And it's just, let's try and cram in as many like stereotypical like Indian animals as we can in this scene, but also like swinging on vines. It's just awful. Like, it's just another chase that is taken purely from a comedic aspect, which I find so confusing, because I didn't think John Glenn viewed James Bond in this way. I always thought he was a bit more gritty and grounded, and from the last film, yes, there were comedy stuff in there. I thought he was going to take this and tone things down, but like from what we saw with Moonraker and The Spy Who Loved Me, but it seems like, no, this is like one of the worst over-the-top comedic scenes we've had in the franchise, and it's terrible. It's so bad.
It really is. It really is. Just as you said, like all the going from spider to tiger to snake to leech to crocodile, it's too much. It's just too much. And I think one of the things I really don't like about this film, and there's an element of that in other Bond films, but this one has had a couple so far, is just elements that really date it. Really date it. So we've already mentioned about the tennis player, where no one's going to, well, maybe not no one, but less and less people are going to know that guy was a famous tennis player. So why has he suddenly got a tennis racket and then there's all these gags about tennis, right? That's one of them that already just makes it seem a bit odd. And in this one, I remember reading about why Bond does this really silly sit thing to the tiger. And it's because it was a reference to this dog trainer that was on TV in the 80s or like the 70s maybe, who used to talk like that. Yeah, like she used to go, because it's very specific the way he says sit, where he has his hand up and is like he's telling off the tiger going sit like that and doing it in that sort of emphasis. And it's because there was this woman on TV who did it exactly like that. And I just think, well, you don't need these references in Bond films. It's just I mean, yeah, ages it if you know the context, but also in when you're watching the film, it makes it confusing and bad. And yeah, I really don't like this whole scene. I think it's pure kind of like schlock. Like it's just, as you say, played 100% for comedy.
It's so interesting though with this film. Well, it's not that interesting because this film isn't that interesting. But I've had an interesting experience where this film didn't like wind me up in the same way that not just Diamonds Are Forever, but even like bad Bond stuff kind of winds me up in a certain way, right? Like, but this film, I just feel so like indifferent to it. So I was talking about it now. It's like, yeah, if I think about it, this is terrible and I didn't enjoy it. But it doesn't really wind me up. I just feel more just kind of defeated and sad while watching it. I'm just like, this is just just dreadful, isn't it? Like, if it wasn't for this rewatch and doing this podcast, I would have just been on my phone the whole time when watching this. But because I had to write notes and pay attention so I could talk about it, I didn't. But this is like so nothing. Like, I would have just been on my phone. I'd be like, oh, they're making Tarzan noises now? Okay, fine. And just like checking Reddit or something. This is just a film I would have just been on my phone constantly if I didn't have to actually somewhat try and take it all in.
Yeah, I got to admit, it was a bit of a struggle watching this film, and it should never be that way. But I did, not even just at like one point where you're thinking, oh, this film's been going on for a while now. I kind of wear out, like looking at your watch sort of thing. There were multiple points in this film where I felt like that. It wasn't even just one. And this was one of them. This was what, well, no, actually, to be fair, this one wasn't, because I was watching this kind of in terms of a so bad it's good. What is going to happen next sort of thing? What animal is going to come up next in Bond's way? But there are definitely other points in this film which are a bit more dry, where I was just thinking, this is just, I want this to be over.
I had that as well, like the exact same thing. Like some other Bond films, when we've rewatched them, I've paused them for a little break. That's it's quite a long film. I've got to type for most of it, doing notes, maybe get a drink or something. Like that's not that crazy. But this one, maybe like 5 times. And some of those, I just paused it and just stopped and didn't do anything. And I was like, I don't want to keep watching this anymore. It's really just a sad experience watching this film.
Yeah, it really is.
But anyway, let's go.
Anyway, yeah.
Next scene.
Next scene. So Bond got on the boat, as you say, and he's back in the Q branch, where you get a very kind of like a close-up shot of the octopus tattoo, or I guess Q or someone in that branch has done some research on it, and explains that it's linked to this wealthy woman on the floating palace called Octopussy, and that Bond should and it's an island full of women, and Bond should go. Bond's there. Oh, I should probably go investigate then. And that's it, right?
Yep.
I'm just trying to think if they actually say anything more specific about Octopussy, but they don't. It all comes from her, actually, her background. So, yeah, that's basically the lead that they have. Go see this Octopussy mysterious woman on the floating island, and so that's what Bond does. He uses a crocodile submarine thing as a way to swim into the vicinity, because it's heavily guarded, I think they mentioned. So he uses this little crocodile sub which looks like a crocodile just on the surface of the water, but he's there laying down, and the mouth opens up and lets Bond look out and check that he's there, and it's obviously very silly. Although actually, I think as far as gadgets go, I mean, yeah, it's not the worst one I've seen. I think a lot of people might critique that for being ludicrous, but it's better than the Bondola anyway, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's dumb, but I think it's actually somewhat funny seeing Roger Moore in a fake crocodile.
Yeah. Bond breaks in or sneaks in. Although Octopussy, you do see that she is just watching Bond's every move on her little TV screens. So she knows he's coming, and he knows when he gets up to the door and when he's about to come in. So as he enters with the gun, she's there ready and waiting, and we do finally see who she is, and it's I forgot Maud Adams is the actress's name. As we've seen her before, she was the lady in The Man with the Golden Gun. She's come back.
No, completely different.
Completely different. It really is an odd choice that they chose to reuse an actress like that. I guess they really liked her. I don't know. And she's not bad. I think she's definitely better in this film than she was in The Man with the Golden Gun, by far. But it's just they do like to reuse people, don't they, in these films? They really do. And
go on then, Joe. Explain us some backstory. I'm ready for it.
Do I have to?
Yep.
Okay, so straight off the bat, you kind of get the sense that she's not actually that evil. She seems quite chummy with Bond and offers him a drink and all this sort of stuff. And quite hospitable, I would say, for being the character that we saw earlier, where you didn't see her face, and she was, as you say, she was quite dignified and a little bit foreboding with what she was saying. Now we've seen her, she's actually quite pleasant, and you realise why. And it's because, she asked Bond about this man that he was involved with on a previous mission. I don't remember his name.
I think it's Major Dexter Smythe. And I did look that up. I'm not
okay.
Gonna... I think Smythe is the one they actually say. But yeah, it's Major Dexter Smythe.
That guy. Why did you leave it? This is awful. He was wrapped up in some gold smuggling operation previously, and Bond, I'm really cutting this short. I mean, it is longer in the film, but basically Bond was involved in a mission to go and give him the option to basically come out of that the like syndicate or the criminal underground that this man had got himself wrapped into, and yeah, from a government perspective, give him a way back to England. And I think in the end he was found to have committed suicide, but Octopussy is his daughter, and the reason why she is quite friendly to Bond is that she was pleased that Bond at least gave him the opportunity, an honourable way out of the mess that he got himself in, sort of situation. And so that's why she recognised the name earlier on when Khan was explaining, and why she is not immediately just shooting him or killing him or capturing him. So as I say, in the film, it's a little bit more long-winded than that, but that is basically the gist of it, is that she's on Bond's side, really. She respects him for what he did.
I don't think you got that right, but I'm not confident enough to correct it.
Really? What do you think it was?
So it's roughly that. So I'm pretty sure it's like, it's about gold, but there was like a man and his guide was meant to see the gold, but they both disappeared. Bond was meant to go and recover the gold because no one ever did, and finds the guide has been shot, but then finds Major Dexter Smythe, who turned out he was the one that killed the man and stole the gold. So rather than Bond taking him to be trialed for treason, he allows the man to kill himself instead.
Oh. Okay, well, whatever,
I mean,
basically.
the real way to know this is to read the book, because I believe the idea is that this backstory is just Octopussy, the book, or one of the books anyway. It might not be Octopussy. And that's why it's here, and that's why it's so insanely complicated, because it's like a book's worth of content reduced down to just give some character a backstory.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I mean, I didn't catch much of it, as was quite evident then. I clearly got that wrong, but I at this point, I really didn't care. It was very in-depth, and I was gone by this point. So
that's fair, but it's like, I just need to make the point. it is insane that they expect people to follow that. Like, I watched it twice to try and figure it out, and even then I'm not confident on it. It is absolutely insane that anyone would watch that and be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's making sense to me. It's just like not possible.
Yeah, that makes me feel a bit better then. But Khan comes in at one point and is there to explain to Octopussy that Bond's escaped, and she says, "Oh well, okay, that's a shame, but meet my guest." And oh look, it's Bond, and Khan's obviously very angry and embarrassed, and can't remember what he says, but he eventually leaves. And Octopussy and Bond, actually can't remember what they do next, to be honest with you.
Well, there's like a little bit of talking, right? It's Octopussy kind of explains how her father loved octopuses or octopi. And apparently her dad is the one that gave her the nickname Octopussy, which I'm like, that's not right.
Oh, that's a bit, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad he killed himself, because that's not... Don't know about that one. But I guess briefly, like, yes, she says, oh, I haven't broken any laws, so if you want, stay as a guest. Of which Bond gets escorted to his room by some women who we find out later are part of Octopussy's cult, the Octopus Cult. Although, to me, they look like something from Dr. Seuss here, because they're wearing like these bright red outfit with like an octopus symbol on there.
They definitely stand out, that's for sure.
And that's that. I would have to say, I mean, I do like you said, I think Maud Adams actually does a much better job here with Octopussy than what she did before. Like, I think she brings a lot to the role. I really like her. In a vacuum, I really like Octopussy. Not the film. No. But the character.
Yeah, make that clear.
Yeah, I got to clarify that. But I actually really like her and the way the character is. It's just the backstory is super confusing, and this film is just super confusing. So it's like all the positives I could say about the way the actress handles this and the way she talks and interacts with Bond just kind of gets ruined by the rest of the film being what it is, which is kind of a shame. But there was something there, and I think there is real potential there. It just doesn't work in this film because of what this film is.
Yeah, it would have been nice if she was actually a villain, though, in a way. I would have liked if she was bad. But then maybe I'm just, we'll get there eventually with The World Is Not Enough, I suppose. Anyway, Khan, after seeing that Bond is with Octopussy, he has gone along with Gobinda to go see a bounty hunter to basically go and order Bond to be killed. And he says, he's at the floating palace, but leave the girl, don't touch her. Here's some money, and then you get this really creepy guy with like an eye scar, and it's just like he likes laughing. He laughs a lot. They used the photo that Bond had taken of him at dinner earlier on as a way to, let the bounty hunter know who to get. And you also get introduced to this guy above. So they're down below, and there's a balcony above them, where this guy has a very interesting kind of yo-yo saw blade weapon, which he demonstrates by whipping it down, and it chews up the photo of Bond a little bit. And I guess that's what the guy finds so funny. But that weapon in particular makes a reappearance. It's meant to be very much a gimmicky, kind of a bit like a henchman weapon. You see it quite a lot come back later on.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's terrible.
I really didn't like it at all. It just wasn't intimidating. It was just a bit too silly for me.
It doesn't really make much sense, does it?
No.
If you really think about it.
It doesn't have to make a lot of sense, but I never really felt any threat from this weapon. I think it just looks too silly, and the way it works, like as you say, it's a yo-yo saw blade. And the fact that it's not even wielded by a character, like it's just a random goon that has it. I don't quite get why they did that. It would have probably worked better if, like, the evil man, what's his name, Gobidar, if he had it, then maybe that could have worked. But they just give it to random people who try to attack, and I just don't know why they did it like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's meant to look cool, but it doesn't really.
You're just not The passion isn't there, is it, Joe?
It's really not. This film kind of defeated me. I'm going to be honest with you.
Shall I do the next bit then?
Yeah.
So they have to summarize, Khan has hired a group of men to kill Bond with a saw blade disc, but make sure that they don't harm Octopussy. So we then cut to Q, which is nice, having a little fish by the river, which we see is him outside the floating palace, not the other palace. This is the island. So he is looking out for Bond. And because Bond is still in there, and Octopussy kind of explains a little bit about the octopus cult and how she's a legitimate businesswoman. I swear, I own circuses. That makes me a legitimate businesswoman. And we then see VJ arrive to see Q, and Bond, or Q and VJ talk a little bit. They say he's still on there, and Q makes a joke about it's an island full of women. Of course, he's still on there. And Bond is then separated from Octopussy for a little bit, and he looks into a drawer, and he finds a leaflet that says Octopussy Circus on the back, and a big picture of a clown on there, which seems a little bit odd initially, but we find out why he sees that. So Octopussy re-enters the room. She says, I've got to go to Europe on a business trip, but Bond should stay because I'm only going to be gone a week. And Bond says no, and she then tries to recruit Bond, saying we're two of a kind, of which Bond says I'm not for hire, which she takes extremely personally for some reason. She gets really mad.
Yeah.
Like, she takes it that Bond is criticizing her for not working for Queen and Country, and like storms off like in near tears into the next room. I feel like they edited something else there because it just doesn't make sense as it's presented.
No, she goes from 0 to 10 quite quick there in terms of emotion. It is like, what?
So speaking of what, Bond follows and grabs her and forces a kiss on her, of which she's like, no. And then he says, well, you did say we're two of a kind. And then she's into it and gives the old James. So they start kissing on the bed, which I don't really have the energy to criticize this. It's terrible. It's stupid. But I'm not that invested in this film and Octopussy as a character to care that much. But we've seen this scene before, and it's always kind of bad. But they were setting them up kind of as equals, and this kind of ruins that a little bit. Like, there's definitely a better way of having them kind of come together and see eye to eye. This just feels very forced, very quickly edited, because Bond and Octopussy need to get together, so let's just reuse the same tropes we've always used just to make that happen.
The main thing I put about this scene, once again, you might think I'm obsessed with it, but I just put that there were gross noises in this scene as well.
Oh, were there? I didn't notice it, this scene.
Yeah, I just heard more creepy kissing, gross, wet noises, sloppy.
Ah. I don't know if John Barry was involved in that, but...
And that's all I really have to say.
Yeah, so we'll keep moving forward. So we then go to... So Q and VJ was watching, but Q was originally on watch and VJ came to sub in for him. So we see him fishing and he then hears a noise, which is like, is that Q? Q, are you there? And we see two men jump out at him and grab him. And then the evil man from before shows up, stares at him, looks all evil. And one of the goons then has the saw blade, the yo-yo saw blade, and they drop it onto VJ, and just as it's about to hit him, it cuts away and the birds nearby go crazy. Basically, he has been killed off, which is kind of a shame. I did kind of like this character, and it did kind of suck to see him die. Like, he is quite naturally quite likable despite the tennis stuff. So he's not one of the best ones, but I think some of these side characters have been quite weak in Bond films. I actually thought it was all right. I actually found him quite likable.
He was very smiley, which was nice.
Yeah, he was just happy-go-lucky.
Yeah, clearly happy to be there, happy to work with Bond.
And now he's dead.
Now we got yo-yo saw-bladed.
So at the same time as that, we get a quick zoom in on Bond's bed, because Bond is now in bed with Octopussy, and he then checks outside, and we see some shots of the water, and I think Octopussy's like, come back to bed, and Bond's like, I've got a bad feeling, but he doesn't see anything. And then we see all the men from before he was hired climbing onto the palace. And I'm going to say that this is when I started stopping the film, like what we talked about earlier, because I wrote in my notes, and I don't normally just quote my notes sometimes. I just put, I hate this film. So devoid of joy.
Devoid of joy. Wow.
I was just like, oh, God, this is so boring. I just don't care. Because now this is all building up to all the assassins that were hired are going to attack the base and try and kill Bond. But it's like, I just don't care.
Yeah, that is it. I was so apathetic to this film at this point. I'd rather have been mad. But as you said earlier, it's not being mad. It's just letting it happen and just waiting. Waiting is what it is.
Because I don't know why we had to have these assassins like this. I mean, just to try and figure out a little bit. I wasn't into Bond and Octopussy getting together, and yeah, it was kind of sad about VJ, but I don't know why we're even doing this. Why are we having a scene where all these assassins attack this base? It's stupid.
Why are we having this scene?
There's just no need for any of it.
I don't know, you get more cool saw blade action.
Yeah, I guess so, but we go from egg to this. We don't even have the egg anymore.
I long for days of the egg.
Remember the egg? That was so cool.
Get me back to the auction room. I just want to stay there. That was nice.
This whole film should have just been that auction room, but they do it at like £10 interval for the bidding. So it like never ends.
Oh, and the climax of the film is just Khan buying the egg.
Yeah, then he leaves.
Yeah. Oh, I'd much rather watch that.
Applause.
Oh, we are being quite harsh, aren't we? But it's fair.
This is just, I think we're being harsh, but it not, the rest of the film is not just terrible, I would say, in my opinion. There is some stuff that I didn't mind or kind of liked. It's just, this is the point in the film where, for me anyway, it really sunk in how much I just didn't really want to be watching this film. And it wasn't necessarily anger or frustration saying this is terrible. Well, it was a little bit of that, but it wasn't like, oh God, this is horrible. It's just like, just kind of want to just turn it off. And this is where I really felt it, I think.
Yeah.
So, yes, all these men are sneaking into the base, and it's actually quite a nice little shot here where Bond is invited back to bed and by Octopussy, and we see a little shadow on the wall very quick of a man because they're all sneaking in. And eventually a man sneaks above the bed, and this is the man with the yo-yo saw blade, and he drops it on, but at the last second Bond sees it and it's like, move, and pushes her out the way and rolls out of the bed, and they then have a bit of a fight. So he's fighting these guys and these saw blades, and it's just kind of missing, and Bond starts being choked out by one of the guys, and Octopussy helps by smashing the champagne bottle they were drinking, because of course they were drinking champagne. And the saw blade that was on top, Bond pulls him down by the saw blade, so he drops down, and the fight kind of spews out into the room that had the octopus tank in, that they were in before. And Bond smashes the man, or one of the guys' heads, into the octopus tank, and the octopus just attacks his face, just completely suffocates him. And it's been said before how there's like venom, these are poisonous octopus, so he kind of just falls on the floor and dies. And the man with the saw blade is fighting Bond. Eventually the octopus cult women show up and give Octopussy a gun, or a tranquilizer gun, and she shoots one of the henchmen to knock him out. And Bond and the man with the saw blade, I think, fall into the river outside. They fall out of the window and fall into the river, of which then crocodiles show up. And we see someone is being attacked and killed by crocodiles, but we don't see who. And we get a little short shot of Octopussy starting to cry a little bit because Bond never comes back up. Like, nobody comes up to the surface, so they assume that Bond has been killed. So we cut to, while Octopussy's being sad, we actually just cut to Bond in the fake crocodile suit again, coming ashore to meet Q. And Q explains that VJ has been killed by Khan's men. And Bond says because he saw about the circus before. I think there's some other connections, as you say, about what he heard on the radio, but there's been a few hints at needing to go to East Germany, so he says he's going to the circus in East Germany. And I don't have much to say about that one. I think this is very much like all the other Roger Moore fight scenes where there's not that much to it. Although on paper it sounds like it should be kind of cool, like with the saw blade and with Octopussy helping. Like, that's quite a neat dynamic, and ending it with Bond getting away with the crocodiles eating, like, that's quite a nice touch. I just didn't really feel much watching it.
I didn't feel much watching it, My favourite part of that whole scene was when Bond smashes the guy's head into the tank, the octopus tank, and yeah, you see it on the guy's face, like a face hugger almost. And that could have been enough to be that's enough to let you know, all right, that guy's dead because yeah, venom is fatal. But I do love how they had to. There's one other shot later on, not long afterwards, and it's of the octopus on the guy's face, and it's just jiggling.
Oh yeah.
It's just this octopus just having a little jiggle on the face, I guess, to sort of sell that it's doing something to this guy on his. I just think that's great. You know what? The octopus jiggle that made that whole scene worth it.
Do you think he was a real octopus when it jiggled?
Oh, 100%. It was so natural. So natural.
Great acting from the octopus here.
Best acting in the film so far.
Yeah, I do like this kind of theme of the octopus, though. I think the octopus is a cool looking creature, so I do like having it in here. Maybe they go a bit too far with it, with a character called Octopussy and everyone having tattoos of octopus, but I do like the shots they have of this octopus. It's a good character.
I don't think they go far enough with octopi. I think Bond needed to have fought an octopus. Or maybe the octopus was the villain.
Khan takes off his hat and is, it was an... Or maybe, the evil man, under his turban, there's just an octopus pulling the strings like Ratatouille style. That would have been cool.
Yeah, each tentacle doing a different thing. Yeah, see, so many possibilities of octopi, but there you are. Right, anyway, back to the film, yeah? We are now we're done with India for a while. We're back into Berlin, into East Berlin, where Bond has met with M in the car. And M is giving Bond his disguise for this area. He's being disguised as some sort of manufacturer, going to visit factories in East Berlin. And I do like that at one point, M just says to Bond, "You're on your own." And I think Bond says, "Oh, that's comforting," or something along those lines. But yeah, I mean, we do see later on that the rest of all this kind of bit in Berlin, Bond is on his own. He doesn't have any backup. So yeah, they drive up to, I assume it's like Checkpoint Charlie or somewhere on the crossing between West and East Berlin. And M leaves him, and Bond goes with a different contact further into it to go find out more. And obviously he's going there to go find the circus that he saw on the flyer in Octopussy's room.
I think, they briefly talk about the jewellery because he makes the joke about being the tip of the tentacle or something. I don't think they really fully explain it. I'm still not too sure exactly why this jewellery stuff had to even be part of this plot. But I think it's because Bond was originally sent here to figure out what's going on with the jewellery. So I think there's like a small line here of Bond kind of explaining, like, actually this jewellery is going to lead to something a lot bigger. Like there's something much bigger going on here. It's not just fake jewellery. There is something bigger going on.
Yeah. Yeah, but doesn't M ask why would Orlov be interested in this? So, yeah, tip of the tentacle, as you say. Bond goes to the circus and goes to...
Yep, go on. Yep.
Tom's favourite place. He's back at the circus. He goes to sit down in
Isn't
the
that
show.
one of the Ian Fleming books, Bond Goes to the Circus?
Yeah, they haven't used that one yet, actually. For some reason, they didn't use it for this one.
Weird.
So they've still got that one in their back pocket to use. Yeah, Bond's at the circus. He goes to sit down. It's full of loads of Russian army men, and there's also Khan, Octopussy, the henchman. Don't think Orlov is there. Orlov,
No, he is there. Yeah,
he is there. The twins are there. It kind of goes to show how many characters we've got. They're all there. Everyone's there. The whole gang's back together. And the circus goes ahead, and you see some of the acts and some of the acrobatics, or someone being shot out of a cannon. And all whilst this is happening, Bond is trying to sort of suss out what's going on. He's looking around and gets in the way of someone, and someone tells him off and tells him to go sit back down. He eventually does spot one of the workers at the circus who's left his jacket or his coat or something on a chair. So he uses that as an opportunity to disguise himself as one of the staff at this circus, because the next day you get him kind of lifting up some of the I guess the circus is done. It's packing away onto the train to move on to the next place. So Bond is there kind of helping out and carrying some things and trying to blend in to find out more.
Oh, you've missed one of Bond's finest moments as well here.
Have I?
So he's trying to see what's going on, and as you say, everybody's here. And he's trying to hide from them because I think Octopussy thinks Bond is dead, so they all think he's dead. So he's trying to hide from those guys. And there's just a brief scene where like he's trying to move through the crowd and this giant fat man gets up. So Bond uses his opportunity to hide behind him to get through the crowd.
Oh, what? I missed Bond hiding behind a fat man.
Yeah, but this guy is huge, but it's not like fat. It's mostly how tall he is. Like this is just a huge human being. But you just got Roger Moore like sneaking behind him in order to get around, which is how he ends up sitting by the German or the Russian soldiers.
Oh, okay. Thank God for that fat man.
Yeah, I don't think he was in on it.
Imagine if he was. No, but he could have saved the world there, that one man, by being so big. Okay, yeah, I must have missed that bit. Okay, right. So now we're on to the whole train stuff. This is where I got very worried. Because
but you love a train.
I do love trains, and I do love one train stunt scene that comes up later on. I do not love this train stuff because, as I say, it's the next day, Bond is there with all the people packing up, and he spots one of the he spots Orlov going into one of the carriages that's kind of on its own, like a big bright red one.
I think it's pink, right?
Is it pink?
Yeah.
Anyway, he goes up to it and kind of hides around it to try and find out what's going on inside. And inside we see Orlov is there with the jewellery, which has been swapped out. So he's done his part of it, which is swapping out the fake Russian jewellery back in Moscow with the real stuff. So they've now got the real jewels in this train carriage. I'm trying to be very going through this point by point. Because
is it real?
Yeah, because then we cut to the repository we saw earlier in Moscow where Gogol's there. And the guy, some guy that knows about jewelry clearly, is examining the star, Romanov star, that's what it's called. And he notices it's a fake because he crushes it on the floor. And so I think Gogol probably suspects it's something to do with Orlov and asks where he is.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, I got confused by this. But that, I guess it makes sense because there's this canister which becomes important. It's the canister full of the jewelry, but we did see it before when Bond was at the palace and has been captured by Khan. We see the evil man takes this canister of jewelry to the helicopter and then it flies itself over here.
Yeah. Yeah, well that was Orlov taking it back to do the switcheroo. And now we've got the real stuff here.
Right.
And they are, as you say, they're sealing it away. It's in this canister and they're sealing it away in the base of a cannon that's used in the circus.
Why are they doing that?
I don't know.
Why are they welding it?
I guess because at some point when they have to cross the border and there's going to be an inspection that they would not think to look there, but they probably could have hid it in many other places.
But they swap it out anyway. So I don't get why they weld it, because then they have to unweld it later.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think the real reason is so Bond can fight somebody with a welding torch.
Oh yeah, that great fight we get later on. Maybe that is it. Maybe that is it. So yeah, that's getting sealed away. Bond is still there around the train carriage, and it eventually, I think they're done, so it eventually starts moving. So he kind of goes underneath it and kind of grips on underneath whilst it's moving.
Also, I apologise if I'm making this more confusing, but there are two trains here.
Yes, there are. There are two
it's
trains.
It's not clear. It's confusing, but there is one because the circus, Octopussy Circus, is travelling by train. but there is a separate carriage, the pink carriage, which is what everyone was on with the jewelry, and then everyone got off onto a different train to leave, and Bond stays with the train or the carriage anyway that has the jewelry on it.
That's right. That's right, because bear with us. The train, the carriage goes into a tunnel, and that is where the identical carriage is. Looks exactly the same, except in this one, there's a bomb, because Bond sneaks over and is able to listen in. He switches the one he's hiding with, and inside that one, I can't remember who's in there now actually, but they're talking about the nuke. There's a nuke that's being loaded into exactly the same spot where the jewelry was on the other one. It's being put in the cannon base, and there's a guy there that's explaining about how to set the timer for it and what to do to trigger it, and all that sort of detail. Yeah, that's that. I think.
I think so. I don't. It's so confusing, but because now there's just a bomb. Everyone, this film is now about a bomb as well as the jewelry. Like, this is like now revealing the evil plan, but it really makes you miss this. Like, everyone takes the mick out of them. The scene where the guy sits down and explains his evil plan, but we don't get this. So instead, we just have like a random Russian officer explaining to like the evil looking man, be like, here's a bomb to blow up a base. It's like, what? What? And we do get an explanation with the villain. That still does happen, but it's just like, man, this film could have done with one of those a little bit sooner. Just a little bit sooner.
It really did. There's things in Bond films where they do this, where they reveal a bit before you understand. I mean, we had that in the last film where you see the parents get shot in the boat. You don't really get what's going on, but then thankfully it's explained in the next scene. Whereas here, it's you do have to just sit with it and hold tight for a while and just not overthink it, because suddenly there is a nuke and that is now another threat. But the idea is that they're identical because they're going to that's how they're crossing the border, because they're going to switch it, sort of thing.
Which the crossing the border thing, they mention it a lot, but I never really understood their plan for this. So I'm just going to say, sure, why not? But I never really understood how this is like technically meant to work out, the switching of the tunnels, and like in the tunnel, it's all very strange.
Yeah, it really is.
No, so we have the two carriages in the tunnel, and Bond has jumped off the train at this point. Or the other train goes after they've done the old switcheroo. So Bond stays in the tunnel, and it's just running through the tunnel. And we cut to the General, Khan, and Octopussy having champagne on the other train that left. And they give a brief thing of their plans, saying how the jewelry is going to net them I think it's like 300 million or something, like a ridiculous amount of money. And we get a little bit more about how the General is saying how you get what you want and I get what I want, because what he wants is the bomb, while Khan wants the money for the jewelry. So the train then stops and the General gets off and he leaves by car. And we just need to see that the General has left the train at this point, a different train. So we then go back into the tunnel where the carriage, one of the trains is gone, but the other one has stayed. And we see the twin is using the welder to unweld the jewelry out of it, I believe.
This is the first one with the jewelry in it still.
Yeah, so this is still that one. That's the carriage that's currently here. So the twin is doing that. Bond is coming up behind them, and the twin sees Bond in the diamond that he's looking at, because all the fake jewelry is now out, and he opens it up. And he just quickly turns around and points the welder at Bond. And Bond's like, and just gets away from it. There we go. So because the twin is all about throwing knives, he starts throwing knives, and it gets very close to hitting Bond, but never actually hits him. So Bond then kicks this lever because they're using the cannon to smuggle this. The cannon's there. So he kicks a lever, and that drops the cannon down, and he knocks him out. And is that it for this twin? Does he actually die rather than get knocked out?
I mean, in this scene, it looks like he just gets knocked out because he gets bonked by. I mean, to be fair, it's a big cannon, but he just gets hit on the head by a cannon. But then later on, with the other twin, you have to assume that he died from this.
Yeah, like I didn't think about it too much because to me it just seemed a silly, haha, man gets hit on head. But yeah, he probably died, so that's sad.
Yeah.
So I think the train then comes and picks up. So because it's a separate carriage, there's actually a separate little train that connects to it and then moves it. So Bond steals the clothes of the twin that he just killed. And then the train comes to take the carriage away, of what Bond quickly, like, in the guy's clothes, like, thumbs up to the driver very quickly. And Bond also then puts the twin in the cannon and points it upwards, which I don't remember where that goes, but I guess we'll find out together. So then this train is taken on longer than stops, and the general enters the carriage, of which at this point Bond has his gun. He's waiting for him, has a gun, and points at him and asks him, what's going on? Like, why is there a bomb on the train? And he doesn't really say that much because he's just like, like the general's just being a bit evil. And we actually get Bond figuring this out. So he says, why, like, there's a bomb going to the US base because this circus, this isn't really explained, I'm only realizing it now. This circus was performing for the Russian troops in East Germany, and now they're going to use the train to transport the circus to West Germany to do the same performance for the Americans. But as part of this whole bomb plot, the train's going to West Germany and the American base has a bomb on it, of which Bond is all like, I'm concerned about this bomb going off. And it's like, well, what will happen when the US retaliates? Then he's like, I can't remember exactly what he says, but he says it's so smarmy, like, retaliate against who?
You got a very good impression of him. Well done.
It's very Dr. Evil. It's very much that. Of which Bond then says, oh, of course. It's so obvious.
Yeah, Bond does all the kind of explaining here, really, because he just works it out.
Yeah, and he's like, of course. So we have our early tracking warning systems for bombs and nukes. And because of that system, the Western Front will say, well, it can't be Russia because we would have seen it earlier. And they would assume that an accidental bomb has gone off in a US Army base, of which will then accelerate Europe's plans for disarmament because of these bombs, of which at this point Russia, or the General Orlov more specifically, will have a much larger force and can then invade. Everyone got that?
Nice and simple.
Nice and easy.
Nice and simple. Yeah.
I feel like this plot line on itself is fine. It's just we were messing around with jewelry and we get in the space of like a minute, suddenly this like US base and this bomb going off, and then like, well, of course, it's the tracking systems. Damn them. It's like,
yeah. This in itself is a perfectly adequate plot for a Bond film. You know, making it look like an accident to cause disarmament, and then that's Russia's cue to step in. Great. All right, that's Cold War gold there. Why did we need the jewels and the egg and God knows how much else we spoke about in this? I just don't know.
But this could have been really good, like a rogue general trying to start this. You know, the idea behind it's good. It's just, this is the first time we've heard this, and we're about to hit like nearly 3 hours into this episode. And we're just talking about the entire point of the whole film. And I guess you could argue previous Bond films have done this, like with the Moonraker plot, where they've kind of, we only really find out he's trying to create a super race towards the end. But even then, everything is going towards that. But it also really makes you miss MacGuffins. Like, remember when it was just like the Solex and all you had to worry about was who has the Solex? Like, I guess the jewelry is supposed to be the Solex, but you have the egg, then you have the fake egg and the real egg, then you have the canister of jewelry, and then there's like a bomb alongside that. Like, it's, we want MacGuffins, please. Like, if this is the replacement for MacGuffins, no thank you. Give me MacGuffins again.
This is why I like the ATAC. It was nice and simple.
Everyone understood the ATAC.
I got it. I do not get this.
Oh, but So the general says, "Oh, it's too late." Of which a Russian soldier then enters the carriage, of which Bond shoots him in the head straight away, and the general uses this chance to run away. And there's a load of other soldiers there, and he's like, "Kill Bond, kill Bond." Of which a bit of a firefight comes out between Bond and the soldiers. Well, it's not much of one, because basically the general's running off, Bond is chasing after, and a soldier show up and Bond to shoot them, and then he just kind of moves on. Of which the general then... Hold on. Does he get on the train or does he get in a car?
I think he's on a different train because Bond steals his car.
Yeah, because Bond gets in a car, but I'm pretty sure we see the general in a car later, but I guess we're going to find out how that happens.
I guess so, yeah.
It's very confusing. So because we are still just outside the tunnel, I think. And yeah, so the general gets on the train and leaves. Bond tries to shoot, but he misses. So Bond, to chase, steals his car and drives after them. There's a bit more shooting. For some reason, Bond knocks a load of soldiers out by using these barrels, which was just like the limpest thing I've ever seen. Like, forget Q not being able to keep it up. Like,
oh, good one.
Thanks. So Bond drives over these spikes, like these what do you call them? Like spike traps, tire traps?
Oh yeah, like reversing tire trap things, yeah.
Yeah, so he drives over those, which punches all his tires. But he does it just as he's arriving at this like crossing for the train tracks. So he then, because he now has no tires, for some reason they just completely disappear, pretty much. He then puts the car on the train tracks and then starts driving along the train track like a train to trace after the general on the other train. Which the Bond theme then kicks in, and we get some reaction shots of people, but luckily these are very brief. It's very quick, just people kind of reacting to it, because they do somewhat treat it like a look at Bond and his wackiness, but I actually didn't mind it that much this time because it's a lot more toned down. It's not quite as over the top as we've seen like in previous one of these.
Yeah, a car could, if it was the right width, maybe go on a train track and ride along it. I quite like that as a little gimmick. That was fine.
Yeah, I didn't mind it either. I was surprised that I don't mind it. I think that's why I'm a bit confused here, as well as everything else. But
yeah. But
the visual of it's quite fun. Roger Moore's Bond in this car on tracks chasing after a train. That's a fun visual.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I got to be honest, from this point on, the film does get a lot simpler, and I do like more where this is going compared to what we've had before.
Yeah, I agree. Like, so we're basically going into a big, large action sequence involving this train where Bond pulls, like, so a man sees Bond behind the train, so then he puts Bond on a different track, of which Bond can then pull up alongside the train, of which he jumps on his car by jamming the accelerator pedal with an umbrella and comes on. And this also happens just as another train is coming alongside the other track, so just as the car gets smashed, Bond jumps on. There's quite a few of these little moments in this scene or this film towards the end, and I get why they have them here, but none of these felt really tense at all. But there's a lot of near misses here.
Yeah, although at least we're now on to, well, I suppose we're not quite there yet, but yeah, the whole train bit coming up, I think, is one of the film's stronger points. You just can't go wrong with trains, honestly.
They tried.
They did try, but I think even with this, there is still elements to be redeemed.
Well, tell me all about it, Joe. I would love to hear about it.
Okay, so yeah, the train smashes into the car that Bond was driving, and it gets launched basically quite far away. And as Bond jumps over and is now on the train with the general, you do see, which is a bit out of the blue, and I might be getting the order of this slightly wrong, but it does happen, is Gogol is now suddenly here. He knew roughly where Orlov was, I suppose. And so he's come over and he finds the wrecked car. And this is where I think I'm right in that this was Orlov's car because it has the jewellery in it. In the boot or wherever they put it. and he spots the jewellery, and he kind
Is
of
it?
realises...
Oh, here's the question. Pop quiz. Is it real or fake?
This is the real stuff.
Okay.
This is the real stuff because earlier on, didn't Bond take the star out of it and kept it?
Sure. Yeah.
So Gogol now knows that Orlov has betrayed the Soviet Union, or at least from his perspective, and stolen the jewellery. Back on the train, Bond is in one of the rooms with the cannon, and there's loads of costumes and stuff in there as well, because it's for a circus, so there's all this other stuff against the walls, and the train is stopped for its inspection, because I guess now is when it's crossing the border from East to West Germany, and so you get some guards coming in to look around, and I think you get a little brief shot with Octopussy as well, up near the front of the train, but at the back there's in the cannon car there is this costume, this gorilla costume, which Bond decides to go into, I guess, whilst the people are there inspecting, and I think is the henchman here at this point as well.
Yeah, so this is kind of all led by the evil man, where they're just kind of... I think... So this is where I confuse myself with the general, where the general is driving his car. I don't know how he got into that car, because I had it in his notes that he got on the train, but now he's in a car, so I don't know. But he actually spots Bond, which I think rises, or he probably reports it or something, or there's some sort of suspicious thing going on. So they're inspecting the train, which Bond decides to hide in a gorilla suit, which doesn't make much sense, but yeah, he's in a gorilla suit now.
Yeah, he definitely likes his costumes in this film. As you say, Orlov is there because he's driven up and is seeing the train over the border, and so he's gone mad and he just needs to get to the train, so he tries to just run straight through the border, which is obviously not going to work too well when there are armed guards right next to it. So as he just starts running through them, he eventually does get shot by one of the guards in the back, just as Gogol arrives and tells him to stop this guard. And so, Orlov is there, dying on the train tracks. Gogol comes up to him and asks about, or says what's going on, and how he's a traitor or a thief to the Soviet Union. And just as he's dying, you get perfectly in character for this character is this nice cheesy schlocky line about soon I'll be known as the hero, and then eyes roll back, and that's how Orlov is dealt with. Just quite simple when it comes to it. Nothing too crazy for what is a crazy character.
Yeah, I wanted a little bit more. Get run over by the train, something like that.
Yeah, I get shot.
Yeah, I do really like this idea of him going mad and storming through the checkpoint and Gogol kind of being the one there. But it's just, we haven't spent enough time with these characters at all. We've been in India talking about jewellery or some nonsense, and Octopussy and the octopus cult. So it's just, well, I've already said it. If this film was a bit more focused on this stuff, this could have been a really kind of nice moment. And I do like this idea of what they do here. It's just it's such a footnote. Although it's not really a footnote because it kicks off what's going on. But it's, just a mess.
Yeah. Back on the train, once again, Khan is in the cannon room with Gobinder, and they are arming the bomb. They're trying to work out the timing of it all. The circus show at this army base starts at 3 and give us a bit of time for delays, so on and so forth. So let's set it for 3:45 is the time that it's going to detonate. And they're putting it all in and setting it all up, ready to go. Bond is still there in the gorilla outfit, still in disguise, listening to all this and watching what they're doing. Khan goes, but the henchman stays there, and at one point Bond, sort of in the gorilla outfit, makes some noise or trips slightly and causes a little bit of a distraction over there, which is enough to get Gobinder to investigate, basically, and he heads on over and chops off the gorilla's head with a sword, although thankfully Bond is now no longer in there. He's taken that as a chance to escape out onto the roof of the train carriage and the little hatch.
Which makes no sense the way it's shot, but that's fine.
It doesn't make any sense because how would it still? How is it upright still? And how do you
do it that quickly?
Do that?
Just doesn't know. It makes no sense. No.
Well, we'll come up to a similar thing with the clown disguise later on. But now he's on the roof, and Gobinder did briefly see like his legs go up, so he knows he's up there and something's going on. There's someone on the train. Well, I guess he doesn't know at this point it's Bond necessarily. Maybe, I don't know. Doesn't really matter.
No, I don't think so. No, yeah, because they asked later, like, did you recognize him? And then he's like, no. Which I was like, what do you mean no? But I think they just dropped that line in there because Khan asked him if you recognize him. But I think they dropped that in there to just say, yeah, just a reminder, guys, they think Bond is dead. So they know somebody's attacking them, but they don't actually know it's Bond. Not that doesn't mean anything. Like, that has no impact or anything, but they throw it in there.
Yeah. Well, you do get that. I do like these scenes coming up now where Bond's on the roof of the train and eventually sort of like has to go onto the side of it and dodge some things on the side of the train. Like there's some bushes that are going past, and you get all these shots of someone actually doing this. And we've mentioned before in this podcast about one of the good things about a train is in Bond films is that there is always just a natural sense of danger, the speed and things like that. So this is great. There's actually some good stunt work here. It's obviously not Roger Moore, but it doesn't. I don't think it was too distracting here, where it's clearly cut into a stunt actor. You just get some interesting things being on top of a train and hanging on and doing all sorts of funky stuff.
Yeah, you see a lot more of it than you would expect for a Bond film in the 80s. Like, they do show a lot of the shots of this man hanging on the train, which is really cool. It's something that I think the franchise has done very well, at least over the last 10 years, is doing these practical stunts and getting really great shots of it. And yeah, as you say, they do that here, and it looks really good. And it does make me think, like, the idea of having this big finale on this train and having a bomb heading towards something and Bond has to stop it, it's a really strong idea. It's just everything up to this point has really soured it a bit, but the idea of it is really strong. And I would love if this kind of stuff was in a different Bond film, because I think on its own, it's actually really cool.
You can't go wrong with an element of some sort of time sensitive end of the world thing, right? It's very basic, but it works. There's this bomb that's about to go off. We know the time, and we will eventually see that they really emphasize that when they show like how much time is left on the detonator. Yeah, that's the sort of stuff where on paper it's so simple, but then it's bringing it to life in these sort of ways and doing the stunts on the trains and things. But anyway, Bond eventually climbs up to the carriage where Octopussy is in, and she's having like a massage or something, and tries to get her attention, but Khan spots him out the window and shoots the window and tries to shoot him, try and get him, which gives Bond a chance to, means that Bond needs to go and escape a little bit more and climb up back onto the roof, because that's where Khan tells Gobinder to go up and sort him out. And so you get a little bit of a scene with him, Bond, and one of the twins is there eventually. I think maybe a little bit later on he turns up. But you get Bond and Gobinder. Has he got a big sword? I feel like he has another big stabby sword.
Yeah, it's a big sword.
Yeah, this bit's fine. I wouldn't say this bit's amazing. It's just kind of more of the same, to be honest with you. Eventually, one of the twins is there, and they both somehow, in like all the commotion, get thrown off of the train together.
I don't know how. It's a bit weird.
I don't know.
They
enter
exactly. A tunnel, but because Bond is just like wrestling, and he's really climbing all over this train trying to get away from Gobinder. But then he ends up fighting the twin, and they just both fall off.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because he uses the steam at one point from one of the pipes or something, doesn't he? But yeah, they fall off this train, and Bond runs off into this forested area, and the twin follows him with his knives. And there is a little cabin for some reason, very, very helpfully nearby. There's a little cabin which Bond is about to go into when he gets knifed. Well, not really, but he gets stuck in place like a circus act by the twin, and he kind of throws loads of knives all around him to keep him in place, and goes up to him and with his final one is about to kill Bond and says something along the lines of "This is for my brother." So that's why I do think the other guy died. Or maybe
he must have done.
Yeah. And as he's about to do that and stab Bond opens the door to like make him fall through and takes one of the knives and throws it in the guy's back instead. And you get a nice little line here where he says, "And that's for 009."
Imagine how much better this would have been if like that opening scene wasn't so silly. Like,
oh, what with it, like being trapped on the door?
Well, being clowns and stuff. Like, because this is shot, a lot of the chasing stuff is shot exactly like that early scene of 009 running through, and now we've got, it's the classic Bond thing of something you saw early on in the film, we're going to do that, but this time it's with James Bond, so how is James Bond going to get out of this one? But the fact that scene was like 009 was a clown, and also just the fact this film's a mess just means this doesn't really have that impact. I think I would have liked this a lot in another film, and on paper it sounds great, but actually watching it was like, well, it's so forced. Like, there's a train with a bomb and now they're just fighting in the forest it's a cool idea, but it doesn't work for me.
Yeah, lots of the film just doesn't really work for me. I did like the 009 line, but at that point the train has now gone off quite far ahead, so Bond is stuck. So he needs to try and get back to the train. He tries to hitchhike unsuccessfully. No one's really paying attention to him. There's one car full of like young people that slows down to sort of bait him to come and join him, and then they just drive off. I did love Bond just being completely screwed over like that. It's just, this end of the world situation, and he said, nope, never mind.
Just jogging along the road with his thumb out.
It looks so sad. So sad. He eventually does find one though. It's this German couple who keep trying to feed him sausages or beer or something like that.
Both of them, any German cuisine. They're like, oh, take it. He's like, no,
danke. Just like, pointing out where he needs to go and everything. And they eventually park in this little town area where he gets out, runs off, and tries to go into a phone booth, I guess, to try and ring up someone to let them know or get something. And there's this really annoying woman who gets in there just in the way, just in front of him, and won't let him in. She's very important phone call she has to make, clearly. So instead, he just steals her car. He spots the car that she came out of and takes that instead. And that leaves him driving off and then being chased by the local police force there in that town.
This bit did kind of make me laugh a bit. Not massively, but as you say, Bond desperately trying to get to this bomb and just kind of having to deal with these annoyances was quite funny.
Yeah, I liked it. It's silly, but it's not too silly. It's just the right level.
Yeah. But alongside this, there's been shots of the circus coming to the army base. So as Bond is running, as he's getting to this town, we are seeing that, there's this big parade going into the army base. So they have successfully entered the base, and we see Octopussy, Khan, and the evil henchmen have all met up at the circus as Bond is trying to get there. So as Bond is being chased by the police to get there, we see Khan is sitting next to a US general or a high-ranking officer, and the circus has begun. So all the American troops are watching the circus, and Khan is there with the US general as he's watching it, and he's having a great time, of which Khan says that I need to go, unfortunately. So this is all part of their plan, because Khan and the henchmen know that this is going to go off. So their plan is to leave a little bit early, because I think the person who explained it from before is that they needed like 20 minutes. It's either like 20 miles is the radius, or they needed like 20 minutes to drive off. It's something to do with 20, I want to say.
Yeah.
So Khan gets away. The car doesn't start instantly, and then it does. Again, actually kind of a little bit of a funny moment. Nothing amazing, but it's quite nice, especially with how slimy Khan is. I quite liked it. And we see Bond is just manically trying to drive down this motorway being chased by the police. And The thing I actually quite liked about this chase scene is, first of all, I really like this idea of Bond manically trying to get here to stop it. But also the German police aren't stupid. Like,
wow, yeah.
Yeah, it feels very much like a reference, like a poking fun at it previously, because in previous films, the police chase and the slightest little turn they have to make, they spin out and go crazy. But we actually see some very, I want to say, deliberate shots of the German police kind of losing their way a little bit, but then just like correcting. And I think one of them does like a 180 or something like that. Like, it was actually really refreshing to see the police. And I feel like it was deliberately done to show like actually the German police are pretty good. Like, yeah, it was deliberately done like that.
Yeah, no other police force around the world, they're all terrible, but Germans, they're actually competent.
Yeah, they'll get you. So we get a lot of shots of the bomb timer, and so Bond eventually gets to the US Army base and pulls off, but he pulls off in a way so the German police, I don't think, really see him. And Bond drives past Khan in the car, of which the henchman's like, should we go after him? What should we do? And Khan's like, just let him go. Like, he's going to go and get blown up, so it's fine.
Yeah.
And then it's a lot of jumping between Bond trying to get to the army base and the circus going on. We get a little shot of Magna, who, she's a magician. Forgot to mention it at this point, but she does magic. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Magna the Magnificent, something like that.
Spin-off.
Yeah. So Bond eventually gets to the army base, and the guy at the thing says like, whoa, what's going on here? And Bond's like, damn it, man, this is urgent. We gotta go, there's a bomb. We've got to stop him. Of which the guy doesn't really believe them. So he then just goes, and everyone starts chasing him. Is it at this point that he gets out the car and just starts running?
Yeah, he just legs it.
Yeah, I think so, because we also see the American are chasing. And I think we get some shots of like the American cars just instantly crashing, which is why I think they're kind of like poking fun at Americans, and also like having the Germans not nearly crash and not crash, and then showing like the American cars just straight away crashing, I think was like a joke they were putting in there.
Oh, I got to admit, I didn't catch that watching it, but it sounds good.
Well, something you probably did catch is that Bond gets into the caravans and gets grabbed by a monkey very briefly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he's going to where all the circus people stay, which is why there's a monkey there, of course, and sees a load of clowns running into the circus. So he gets the idea of, maybe I can dress up as a clown. So he gets into a trailer. We see that there's like less than 5 minutes left on the bomb. Again, lots of cutting to keep the pace going on this one. And Bond then comes out in clown gear, the exact same clown gear we saw on 009 at the very start of the film.
The exact same, with emphasis on how good the makeup is as well.
Yeah, he does a great job.
Yeah, all with, 2-3 minutes to spare. Like,
yeah, the bomb's about to go off in 5 minutes. And
let me just do the eyes, hang on.
Come on, yeah, they're not going to buy it. So Bond then gets into the circus where it's being performed. And we see a lot of Bond is trying to track people down and trying to stop this. And we see the kids go crazy for the clown. Bond is kind of interrupting the act of the guy who's going to get fired out of the cannon. But everyone kind of enjoys it as part of the act. And we see that everyone, the Americans or the security now know that Bond is dressed up as a clown. They report to each other like, go and find a clown. So they go into the circus tent and arrest a different clown, which actually made me laugh.
Poor guy.
Someone else gets arrested, but Bond, dressed as his clown, gets to the general. So the US general we saw before where Khan was at, the general is there with Octopussy, and Bond says like, hey, like, there's a bomb. And the guy's like, ha, what a great act. This guy's crazy. So Bond tries to explain to Octopussy, he's like, you've been double-crossed, there's a bomb here, this is all going to explode and you're going to be killed. That, Khan has double-crossed you. Of which he like, Bond is like, tell them that you know me. Which she just doesn't for some reason.
Yeah.
I guess she's too deep in thought or something.
Not the best time to be distracted.
No. So Bond then starts getting into a fight because the security grab him. But then all the rest of the circus act start fighting the security as well.
It's just chaos. I don't know how this really happens, but yeah, suddenly it's just everyone is there fighting and there's this giant crowd.
Yeah, it's like the circus people don't know that Bond is Bond, and there's a reason they're arresting the clown. So they just assume the US security is just arresting one of their clowns, and they take that personally. And then we get some city shots of circus people fighting US Army security, which is,
yeah,
I'm just numb to at this point.
pretty much, yeah.
So Bond grabs an axe. He's grabbed by security eventually, but says, there's a bomb, of which Octopussy then exposes the bomb in the cannon. And they let Bond go. He goes to defuse the bomb. We see the old metal ring technique, like we saw in The Spy Who Loved Me, where we get another scene where Bond is slowly sliding out the bomb between these metal rings, and he gets it out at the very last second, of which Bond is thanked and he's a hero. Octopussy is told that Khan is going off to India, so she storms off, and we have Bond as a clown just standing there. And that's your scene. That's the big action scene, I guess.
I didn't mind this, actually. I gotta be honest.
Okay, so Roger Moore as a clown. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up
from me. Yeah, I don't mind Roger Moore as a clown, actually. I know a lot of people don't, but...
I don't.
You're not?
No.
I mean, I can still appreciate the scene and the tension of it. I think they did a good job with that. The fact that Bond, I mean, excusing the whole thing about like he looks far too good to have that taken like a minute. That's silly, obviously. But I think in terms of the setting and he needs to blend in, and he's a clown. Yeah, so what? It's fine.
I mean, you're right. I mean, overall, I would say this is quite solid as well. But it's just a really solid idea. I love seeing Bond being a bit manic. It's kind of what we got with the Man with the Golden Gun when he was driving after Scaramanga in the red car, where it's a bit more of a manic, desperate Bond. And we really get that here. And it's really great to see. I love seeing Bond like this, where he's just like, there's a bomb. But he decides that he has to like take on the entire US security force of this base, which is extremely risky. So that adds a lot of tension to it. So I would have preferred no monkey, and I would have preferred some of the circus stuff to be died down. But yeah, surprisingly solid. Really good idea. And overall is actually done quite well.
Yeah, I like Bond being out of control of the situation, trying to and sounding like a madman to people, just yelling "bomb, there's a bomb," and just grabbing an axe and just like about to swing it and being held back by people. I mean, it's frustrating, but that's like it's the point of it. Like, yeah, it's I think I can definitely forgive the whole clown aspect of it because I think the scene works anyway. Even if he wasn't dressed as a clown, would it be better? Probably. But it's fine for me, yeah.
Can we ask that question in other scenes, but the opposite? Would this scene be better if he was dressed as a clown?
Maybe Vesper's death?
Just like a teardrop. Sad clown.
Maybe not, yeah. I don't know. And I like how it is Octopussy that is the one that shoots it and reveals the bomb as well. So kind of a nice little... We're not quite at the end of the film yet, but it's a nice thing for her to have done rather than Bond.
Yeah, it was a nice surprise, this ending bit, from considering how the rest of the film has gone. This bit was surprisingly good. Now that we've stripped away some of the fat of the story, it works a lot better. And it does kind of show the potential that maybe this film had if it was just better written to have that fat stripped away earlier. Because now that like the general is dead and it's more just about like Khan portraying Octopussy and a bomb going off, it just works way better. It's just way more interesting. Yeah,
totally. At the circus, still, we find out that Khan has gone back to India. I think Magda says that. So that's where we're off to next. We're not. It seems like the finale of the film, but no, we have to deal with Khan still. And we do cut back to India. We do see Khan in his monsoon palace. He's basically packing up. He's ready to move on. He's there with his henchman, Gobinder, and he's got sort of these note forgery things or something along those lines. Like he's got plans to make a lot of money, basically, wherever he goes to next. Because this plan's clearly failed. So he's there ready to run away. But we've also got Octopussy's women and everyone like ready to infiltrate and take him out. Are they on the boat? Do we see the boat again?
Oh, I'm not sure about the boat. I think we just see them next to the walls of the palace.
Okay, so they got there somehow, and they're all there. Some of them are like climbing up with like big poles and stuff like that, and other ones are sort of distracting the guards as well. There's a little bit of a hodgepodge of what's going on, but you've also got Octopussy. Wait, how does Octopussy get up to Khan?
Yeah, she's there. Like, well, they all just climb up, don't they? I think they climb up separately. Like, there's the human pyramid, but then like there's ropes.
Right. Oh, yeah. Doesn't she get like balanced up on a big stick or something?
Oh yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Like pole vault or something.
Yeah, because she goes up to Khan to stop him and to kill him, and then I don't know. How does I can't even remember how Khan overpowers her.
It's yeah. So I believe it's like Khan is burning a load of papers, and then Octopussy has a gun, waits for the evil man to leave because he was in there, then points the gun. And I think it's just simply a case of the alarm goes off. Like everyone gets, like the evil man sees the octopus cult, which sounds the alarm, which then distracts Octopussy, which allows her to be grabbed.
Right. Okay. Yeah, her plan to kill him doesn't last very long, and she is taken. She's kidnapped by Khan basically, and Govinda. Meanwhile, we see a big Union Jack hot air balloon descend onto the palace.
Of course.
Inside is Bond and Q. Q's here for the final battle. Because Bond is asking I hope you know how to use this contraption, as if he's never seen a hot air balloon before. But yeah, Q's there to descend onto the palace. And it's so why is Q here for this?
Because they just love having Bond and Q together. I don't know. Q did it at the end of the last film as well. Like, he just showed up in confession. I think they just like having Q pop up again.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, he does get involved in a bit of the action later on, so good for him. But yeah, Bond is there to also break into the palace and try and get Khan, and can't remember how he gets in. Again, like I was so done by this point that a lot of the details. Bond is in the palace basically. All I remember is there's this one bit with a tiger rug that he uses to spook one of the guards by presumably making a tiger like cat sound, and then slides down the banister of the staircase and just shoots everyone down it.
Well, he also shoots the end of the staircase so he doesn't get hit.
Oh, of course. I mean, yeah, he's got to protect some parts now, hasn't he?
The crown jewels.
Yeah. Now, in my notes here, I've got LCD watch.
Yes.
I'm struggling to actually remember what this means.
So we see that because earlier in the film, when they were at Q Branch, when they were doing the whole let's zoom in on the cleavage thing, it was to show off the gadget of we have a watch that has a screen on it, so you can just look at the screen and see what a camera sees. And this time Bond now has that watch, but Q has a load of cameras on his hot air balloon, which is still in. So he sees that Octopussy has been knocked out and is being taken away. So Q sends that footage to Bond, and it helps Bond find a secret exit at the back of the place where Khan has taken a knocked out Octopussy.
Wow, okay. I didn't even know there was a secret exit. Because in my bit, my main focus around this time was not so much Bond, but at one point, one of Khan's guards is about to attack some of the Octopussy's cult women, and Q, in his hot air balloon still, slowly comes down and knocks out the guard with the basket from behind, and all the women come up to him, and as he gets out, and they rush over and touching him and kissing him. Oh, thank you so much. And Q's just like, no, get off, not now. And then a little pause, and he goes, later, perhaps. It's just, come on now, Q wants a little bit of the action as well. So it's not just a Bond.
It's not daft.
But yeah, Khan has taken Octopussy on horseback with Gobinder, and they are riding off to a plane to escape. And Bond also jumps on a horse and rides after them. And just as the plane is taken off, Bond manages to ride up with a horse and grab onto the back of the plane. And we get this little scene of Bond clinging onto the plane as Khan, he sees that Bond is on there, so he starts doing all these maneuvers to try and shake him off, like flipping around and barrel rolls or what have you. Although it doesn't really work very well, Bond climbs onto one of the wings and starts to yank out some of the wires on the wing, which stalls one of the engines. And at this point, Khan is obviously a bit worried and saying he's going to kill us all, so he prompts the henchman Gobinder to go out and take care of Bond. And I like how this guy has been so tough and everything so far, this henchman, and you suddenly get him going outside. It's like you actually see him a bit worried now. But he does it. He does go out there, and they're both on the plane. And he tries his best to overpower Bond, but Bond uses the best weapon of them all, an antenna, to thwart the henchman and like whack it back in his face, which causes him to let go and fall off of the plane. Honestly, who needs gadgets when you have antennae, eh?
Such a weak end for this character. Like, you feel like they kept him alive for a reason. Like, I'm surprised he's still here. But no, Bond just quickly kills him with an antenna.
Yeah, really
it's just
quick.
Like, it feels so pointless.
Yeah, he gets into the plane where Octopussy is. I think she is kind of woken up now. And this is the bit I got quite confused at, because it looks like Khan is trying to land the plane. And so the plane is descending, except it's descending right near a cliff, like a cliff edge. So Bond and Octopussy jump out of the plane in time, and then Khan just crashes in the plane.
Yeah.
I felt like I missed something. Was it because the plane was out of control at this point because of the engine?
I think so, yeah. I think it's just the engine. Because Bond rips out one of the wires for one of the engines, Khan has just completely lost control of it, and is just trying to land, but can't because he's just, I guess, a bad pilot. But yeah, it's a bit weird because it just leads to him going off the edge of the cliff and exploding, and that's Khan dead.
Yeah, he just explodes nice and good, and that's it. Bye Khan.
I don't think this section on the plane is that bad. I thought it was all right. It's just kind of a bit of a disappointing end for both these characters. Like, the henchman is just very quickly flicked off, and Khan just kills himself by blowing up the plane. It's like, okay, but it's similar to the train stuff. Seeing Bond climbing on a plane, and some of these shots are pretty impressive because it is quite practical what they did, and I'm sure they actually had someone hanging off this plane, and I think that stuff is solid. It's just maybe a little bit of a disappointing end for the characters.
It really is. Yeah. I just too many characters, and then none of them have satisfying conclusions. Although having said that, I do like whenever something crashes like this, they always do have to have the shot of like the character going and then just suddenly flames. So I like that you got that for Khan as well. But maybe that's just me. And yeah, that's it. So they've jumped out. Everything's good. The day is saved. We see back in London I take it as M's office, I can't actually remember, but M is there with Gogol, who is obviously very happy with that. They've got the jewels back and asks about, can we get the Romanov star back? M's like, I'm sure that's fine. And he wants to congratulate Bond, but unfortunately Bond is recuperating from his injuries from the mission. So we see Bond back in India with Octopussy. He's got all these casts on. He's got his leg up on this bed and looking pretty bad. And Octopussy is there, and can't remember the line she says, but eventually you find out that Bond's actually fine. He rolls her over. He breaks all the stuff that he's got the cast. He yanks his leg down, and they start kissing.
Cue credits.
Not before one more James. There's one last James at the end as well.
Yeah, very awkward James. And then cue credits. Cue
credits.
all-time high.
We're on an all-time high, aren't we, after that film?
Yeah. I'm trying to think if I got anything to say about this specific stuff. Not really. Like, I guess it's nice that it's not so over the top. This end scene, it's still the same format of Bond with the girl messing around, but at least it's a bit more toned down. But yeah, not
It's
as
quick.
bad as the last few.
Yeah, that is true. No calls to the Queen or Margaret Thatcher.
Thatcher, yeah.
Yeah, good. I'm glad.
Do you remember who has to go first?
I don't. Do you?
No. That's bad.
I think you went first last time.
Okay, because it was For Your Eyes Only. I think I did. I think I went first as well. So,
Okay.
Off you go, Joe.
All right. Well, I'm going to keep this brief because I feel like if you haven't gathered by now my opinion of this film, what you've been listening to for the past 3 hours or so, I didn't like this film.
What?
I really didn't like this film.
Oh.
What a come down! What a come down from For Your Eyes Only back to this. And I think that, as I said earlier, I think that was part of the reason why I just didn't like this film so much. It just dragged. It dragged, but as you say, with so much detail, like plot points, it dragged in the weirdest way where I wanted it to be over, and it felt long, but it was also so crowded with characters and plot points and location changes and everything. The plot was just needlessly over complex. I didn't really like the bit with the ambush on the palace at the end. I think it could have probably ended after the bomb defusal and somehow got rid of Khan another way. It just felt tacked on. Music, we haven't really discussed the music very much in this film. That's because to me it was pretty much non-existent. There was a Bond theme every now and then, and we had the slow down version of the main theme as we usually do, but really nothing stood out to me music wise. I didn't like Octopussy very much. She was all right, but she wasn't great. Didn't like Magda. I thought Roger Moore looked really quite old. I didn't like Orlov. It was just too long. A lot of bad things for me. The things I did like most about this film was probably the train stuff and the train stunts. I did like Khan up until a point. I thought he was quite charismatic and could have gone somewhere quite nice, but I think he was wasted. And India as a location was wasted as well. I think they could have done something a lot more and not just relied on cheap stereotypes and cliches. And yeah, so for that reason, we're going such a back and forth with these rankings. So last time I put For Your Eyes Only at number 2, second top, and this one, Octopussy, is now going second bottom. It's going at number 12. It's going at number 12.
Wait, so you think Live and Let Die is worse than this film?
I do, yeah. I still much rather like this. I'd much rather watch this than Live and Let Die.
Really?
Yeah.
I swear this was going bottom for you. I can see gold. I'm very surprised by that.
I think for me it's because there's every now and then there are little bits in this film that are okay. Whereas with Live and Let Die, I mean, I'm sure that's the same there, but I just can't really. Maybe it's just because I'm watching this now, but yeah, it's going number 12.
Okay, well, I mean, down at the bottom makes sense to me, but yeah, I'm surprised by that. I didn't get that impression that you dislike Live and Let Die so much, but it's ended up at the very bottom after 13 films.
I was very tempted as we were discussing this and it's setting in about how much I didn't like this. I was tempted to do a quick switch during recording, but I'm going to stick with what I felt like earlier. I'm going to keep it at 12.
Yeah, well, I think it raises an interesting question about doing these rankings, and it's going to be interesting to see when we get to the end about because we are now ranking films against films that we saw 2 months ago, which makes it very different in our heads. Like a film I saw 2 months ago compared to a film I just saw, it's kind of very different. So there might be a little bit of rearranging at the end, but it will purely be because, right, now we've had a little bit of time, now that I've seen Octopussy 2 months ago, and now it's not immediately in my head, and you kind of figure out what stood out to you and what you remember. In my head, You Only Live Twice is actually, I'm actually liking it more as each week goes by. But I do remember at the time having a lot of problems with that film.
Yeah, definitely.
So I've delayed enough. Octopussy. I think out of any of the Bond films, I would tell people just don't watch this one. Just don't watch it. there's just no point. Unless you're a big Bond fan and you just want to have them all watched, which I understand. That's what we're doing here today. But outside of that, don't watch it. It's just such a waste of time. And I would even say, like, watch Diamonds Are Forever because, like, it's such a weird film.
Oh,
You
hell
might
yeah.
hate it like me. You might like it like Joe. I think Diamonds Are Forever is worth watching. So put that on the poster, I guess. But Octopussy is just not worth watching. I just don't think there's any point. Like, it's such a... Like... So I said last week about how For Your Eyes Only for me was either just like kind of average or not that great. And this one feels somewhat similar to that, but without ever really being average. And just kind of... It never really frustrated me that much, this film. I just felt so defeated watching it and sad. I'm not even going into the actual film itself. I'm just describing my emotional journey I had with this film. It's just a waste of time. And like I said earlier, it's devoid of joy. But there's ideas here. Like, I think with a rewrite and a better director and a... Like, there's ideas here. I like the idea of Octopussy, and I think the actress does a pretty good job overall. I like the idea of the general, and I'm glad they revisit the rogue Russian general idea in GoldenEye for a much better film. And it's just they combine it all so much to be such a joyless mess that it just can't get into it. But the train stuff is cool at the end. That's got potential. Just there's potential here, but it's not like The Man with the Golden Gun, where I said if that was edited down, it would be like a top 5 film for me in this, maybe even number 1, given the right kind of tweaks. But this one, like, you can't edit this down to be something cohesive, because if you edit it down, it's even more confusing. That's just how jam-packed with confusion this is. And as you've said, the India setter is just kind of bad. Like, it's just it's just so lazy the way it's done. It just doesn't add anything. I would have kind of liked if it maybe focused more on East Germany, but even then we got all this stuff with the circus just was so dumb. It just so... It didn't make me annoyed. It just pulled me out of the film. And that's what happens with most of the bad stuff in this film. It doesn't make me mad. I'm not upset. I'm just disappointed. So with that, it's definitely going underneath For Your Eyes Only. That's an easy one for me. So then it comes to Diamonds Are Forever, and this one's a little bit more tricky, because if you ask me right now, like, right, Tom, you're going to stop recording the podcast, we're going to go watch a film, would you rather watch Octopussy or Diamonds Are Forever? I would be like, put on Diamonds Are Forever, let's go.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I would rather rewatch that film over this one, because I think there was it had lower lows, but at least there was more stuff in it I liked. Where I think Octopussy, it's more like there's some potential in some scenes, but there was just very little I didn't like. And it's like 10 minutes longer and more confusing. So I think, seeing how I only just saw Octopussy, I'm still going to put it above Diamonds Are Forever and put it at number 12. But I could see myself maybe at the end of the rewatch. I'm going to have to ask that same question to myself again. Now that the rewatch is done, would you rather watch Diamonds Are Forever or Octopussy? Because depending on the answer to that question is going to be whether I actually move not Doctopussy, that's a very different thing.
Doctopussy.
Whether I move Octopussy to last or not. So I could see myself doing that, because I really had just a miserable time watching this film. So it goes in the very bad tier along with Diamonds Are Forever for me. But I guess watch this space. Maybe it becomes last. Maybe it does overtake Diamonds Are Forever as the worst, but at the moment, I'm going to put it at 12, pushing Diamonds Are Forever down to 13.
Would you look at that? We both put it at 12.
Yeah, we got very similar lists. What are you talking about?
Oh, yeah. Well, for 12 anyway. But I just think, I think we both just sound quite defeated by this film.
It's just exhausting. It's just exhausting. I'm a little bit more optimistic about A View to a Kill, though, because I feel like there's going to be... it probably might be technically like a worse film, but at least I'm going to feel something.
I think it's going to, as you said with other ones, I think it's going to have higher highs, A View to a Kill. So, yeah, I think that will be better.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that a little bit more than this, but I think I've kind of nailed where I put it originally, though. I put it in my bottom 5, and I think that is 100% a bottom 5 film as it currently stands. Even the bad ones that are coming up, I feel like I don't see them being as bad as this.
Well, all I have to say is that after this discussion and watching Octopussy, I need a stiff drink.
I think that's fair, yeah.
I think that's on the table now for me after this recording.
Yeah.
This is Octopussy turned me into an alcoholic. Why are you here, Joe? Why are you at this meeting? Well, where do I begin? There was an egg.
It all starts with an egg, as every good story does. So I do want to quickly say, people might be wondering this. Is next week going to be A View to a Kill or Never Say Never Again? It is going to be A View to a Kill, because we are just looking at the mainline Eon films for this. But Never Say Never, maybe we come back to it.
Maybe. We'll see.
But it won't be Never Say Never Again. I would like to rewatch that one, but maybe I need a little bit of a break after this one. And I'm pretty sure Never Say Never Again is a better film than this.
I was just about to say, I do wonder if that was actually the better Bond film, because I think Octopussy did do better in the end slightly. But in terms of actual, how it went as a film, I don't know. This would not take much to beat, so it could have actually well been better.
The bar has never been lower. Come on, Never Say Never Again. You can do it.
I really want it to now, actually. I haven't felt that way before, but now I want it to be better.
Yeah, because anyway, we'll get there. Keep an eye out on that. Maybe a bonus episode, we'll go back to it.
Yeah, maybe.
Cool. So any last thoughts before we go, Joe?
Some wine or some gin and a tonic?
I think, well, it's quite cold, isn't it? Maybe wine? I guess depends on the wine.
Yeah, I'll go open a bottle of red. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts. That is literally my thoughts right now. There you are.
You just need to forget.
Yes, exactly.
Cool. All right, well, we're going to go and drink. Thank you very much for listening. You have been listening to episode 13 of the Bond Revisited podcast. The Bond Revisited podcast will return next week with A View to a Kill.